Oh, welcome to Plat VALORANT. We got ourselves a little RyanCentral on the show. Look at that. We're going to be doing a Peepo Lad episode.
What the fuck? Yeah.
Avast is once more outnumbered by the British.
Dude, I'm always with the British every time. I don't know how it ends up with me and British people, no matter what, but it's what happens.
For some reason, you appear to be attracted to them. You surround yourself with Jack, me, Bren. I mean, what other British people do you know?
Avast is like a stand user.
We all, yeah, that's what
Except
it is.
British people are other stand users. I don't know where I'm going with this analogy.
I was gonna say that we can all bant, you know, the most banterish American man with the least banterish Brits.
I mean, you look. What is this? Oh, this is you playing Lego
Indiana Jones
with another British person.
Yeah, dude, I shit you not. The Lego games have some of the hardest challenges known to mankind. I shit you not. Like, you should see. You would think that Jaws and I are like we have like we've been ingested an incredible amount of lead paint chips or something when you play this game. You would think that we are the dumbest motherfuckers on earth when you watch us play this game. It is incredible. But also, it's a terrible port. It's a terrible port. You can't jump off half the shit in the Steam Remote Play. So you know,
I'm surprised that we were on this conversation for such a short amount of time before the Indiana gameplay came out. Any excuse, bow, it's in front of us.
Exactly.
The port
right there.
Is the port not good?
It's because there's a remarkable amount of bugs, and so the issue is like. When you're playing on Steam Remote Play, you have to jump. There's a well-known bug to jump off moving objects to get onto things. You can't do it like properly.
Have you tried limiting your FPS?
Are we doing a Plat Chat Lego podcast?
I want to get to the bottom of this.
You have to understand. This is the clear my name. There's the well-known bug, so you can't jump off half the shit in the game. And look at this. Look, I mean, you have to put the motorcycles on the fucking buttons, but you can't control them properly
because
the controls are dog shit. Okay, move on.
Have you tried? So this is a problem with the first Dark Souls 1 port because they didn't port it properly to PC. Hold on, just real quick.
Just move. We gotta move on.
Real quick,
we gotta get out of here. We gotta get out of here.
Try limiting your FPS to what the FPS is when it's being played on console. It's probably like 30. If I was to guess.
We cannot be going down this much of a tangent in the first 3 minutes.
It might fix because sometimes the physics in these games are attached to the FPS.
Yes, I mean like COD Pro Mod.
we should go back to talking about nut jumping.
We're talking about nut jumping.
All right, okay.
I'm done.
All right, thank you.
Tangent over.
This Lego Indiana Jones podcast is brought to you by NordVPN, except it actually is. NordVPN have been kind enough to partner with us for this episode, so you can go to nordvpn.com/VALOChat, or you don't even have to follow that URL, right? If you're a rebel, a rogue, and you just want to type in, make your own way to their website, you can just use the code VALOChat, and you'll be there. You'll be getting all of the discounts. So what happens if I use that code, Josh?
What happens if you use the code?
I'm so glad you asked. You get a massive discount on a NordVPN plan that you buy, plus 1 month free, and then a special secret bonus gift.
Oh,
there you go. I wouldn't tell you, otherwise it wouldn't be a secret, would it?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we're happy to be promoting NordVPN because they are an excellent VPN. They the best one that I have ever used in terms of just being extremely simple to set up, very easy to be able to access whatever you need to. We block Plat Chat in 90% of countries, so you're going to need a VPN in order to access this.
True.
Especially when we run copyrighted content that you're not able to...
Like the Lego series.
Yeah,
it's well-known fact that they are constantly copyrighting Lego.
We didn't play any of the soundtrack, though, so it's okay.
Yeah, but if we were blocked...
Even if you just show little Lego pieces, Denmark comes for your fucking ass.
Yeah, so if you're in Denmark, hop onto NordVPN, connect to, for example, Canada, or, I don't know, Mexico, or... Antigua.
Anywhere where the Denmark Lego fascist regime doesn't hold you under control.
Kind of weird how full circle this has actually come, all things considered.
It's all about the tiebacks. Tiebacks. So anyway, thanks to NordVPN, and go and check them out. Go and check out our partners. All right, let's crack on with the actual Valorant stuff, huh? Are we all in agreement? We could stop talking about Lego Indiana Jones?
Well, I've been thinking about Elden Ring speedrun.
Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Okay, I want to start talking about Valorant. The big thing that happened that's outside of the games. We'll definitely dig into the games, and most of this episode is going to be EMEA focused. That's why we've brought Ryan on. But starting things out, Sean Gares yesterday just announced in 2 big tweets that he's not going to be at Masters 1, and that's not even really the headline. The headline really here is that after negotiations have presumably broke down for Masters 1, he's decided to step back completely from talent. So presumably has something else lined up. I mean, Sentinels have said before that they were interested in hiring him as a coach, and Shaz did say they have somebody like ready to announce next week. So
the Sentinels players have been jumping on this social media chain.
Yeah.
With, I don't know, just some of the
coincidence.
Shaz's post, Dab's post, the Sentinels Twitter posted eyes or something.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, but yeah, Sean is so talented that I think, one, I'm obviously really glad he's staying in the scene, but you know, anything he pivots into,
you don't know
the
that
scene,
actually.
Well, that's true. Actually, I don't know that, but he said that he's staying involved with the competitive side in the initial tweet.
Right. Okay.
So I'm happy for that, and the guy is so talented and knowledgeable that he's going to be able to have impact in whatever he moves into. But I cannot stress how disappointed I am that he's not involved with Masters 1, because in my eyes, he really is the premium analyst. No offense to you. The premium analyst.
I would agree.
You, Ryan. Connor, I don't think I could even qualify.
I haven't had any broadcast work technically, so I can't be included in the conversation.
No, I mean, all jokes aside, though, he really is a fantastic analyst, and he provided so much value to the broadcast. So the fact that he's not involved in the first international tournament of 2022, of the 2022 circuit, I think is so. I just find it incredibly disappointing overall.
Yeah, it's a bit bizarre, and also you can see those ripples affecting other people as well. Like, I saw tweets from, I mean, a bunch of people, but the one that comes to mind because he tweeted this morning was Dust, where he said something like, if Sean's getting stiff for this, then it makes me worried about my future involved in Valorant. And that's just a normal thing for other talent to think about.
Yeah.
And the more of these instances happen, the closer you are to the talent just collective bargaining and fucking up the devs. And I don't think that's a situation that they would want to happen either. So it does seem to be a recurring pattern right now, the undervaluing of broadcast talent within a bunch of different esports right now. I mean, CDL, Overwatch League, here as well. I mean, actually, Riot over at LEC had some weird stuff happening with Shocks at the beginning of the season.
It's been pretty well known, I think. Actually, I don't know how much I'm even allowed to talk about, but essentially, like, I remember when I met Papa Smithy in Korea when he was talking about it with LCK, and like there's like tons and tons of instances across even what is legitimately the largest global esport, League of Legends, how it happens all the time, and broadcasters don't feel like they're getting valued. So
it does. There is a serious. I mean, Mitch posted a tweet about this where he said, if you want to get into casting in Valorant, become a co-streamer. And you know, I can't argue.
Yeah. I mean,
it certainly is a weird time.
If you want to become a caster in general, become a streamer.
Yeah,
just become a content creator.
It's just not really a job where you. Instances like this where Sean can be one of the best in his field and doesn't get the opportunity to work at this event, like Masters 1. I believe that he said that. What was the initial tweet here? He said didn't make the talent cut for Masters 1, which implies that there wasn't an offer even sent. From that, right?
Yeah,
that's the implication.
What that would be implying, yeah.
I mean, what does that tell you? I mean, I feel like any talent that are looking at this, including myself, like the natural thing to look at this is like, yeah, you're looking at this and you're thinking, it doesn't matter how well I do, there's still the possibility that I don't get to work the events. Like, am I not rewarded for my efforts? Like, Sean is one of the most passionate, talented people in the scene, and it is a big, I don't know. It's a red flag, is how I look at it.
It's a red flag. There are obviously other reasons, right? They might want to trial new talent at the beginning of the year and move up to their biggest, most experienced talent for like Masters 3 or Champions or something like that. They might just want a different tone for the broadcast or whatever. But the people who are at the top expect it to be like, or at least have some element of meritocracy where you are valued for your high work. And also, if you miss out on an event like this, that's also a fairly big like pay slash for you.
You're not doing anything for months. If you don't do Masters 1 in the lead up to it, right? It's like
Yeah.
The next time you might be doing stuff in the scene in terms of casting would be, I guess, May if you're doing early stuff. And then when it gets like serious and wraps up into playoffs. Anyway, I don't want to spend too... I've been talking for ages.
Yeah, but also this does open the door a little bit to a conversation about what Sean could be doing. Or like if he went into a coaching role or something like that, I feel like he'd still be slaying it. This was Shaz's tweet showing them on stage together with Sick as well.
That's my organization.
Yeah. Do you own it? You're Ben Spoont now, are you?
Yep. Yeah, I speak for Ben Spoont. I do think that Sean, it's going to be interesting too, because we're going to talk about it later, but there's been he could do the inverse, I guess not quite the inverse Coach Trippy, but with Trippy going to become a player, and now Sean moving broadcast down with the coach. It's interesting the movement that happens within the scene. And I mean, everyone's saying Sentinels because that's the most obvious fit. They need a coach, and they like Sean, and Sean has worked with Shazam and in the past. So it's it feels like square peg, square hole type of thing. So
yeah. Do you prefer square pegs?
Yeah.
Go on. What were you saying, Ryan?
I think it says a lot as well that they brought Raucous to Champions as well. It's less of having somebody that's going to go, we're going to use these set strategies, we're going to go about this way. It's more somebody that has a bit more of a bird's eye view for the team to help them point out stuff, which is obviously something that Sean could do quite well. So I think he's perfect for what Sentinels have been wanting to have in the past, and knowing Sean he has a good amount of ideas about the game. So it would be really cool. It would also be even cooler as well. This is pure tinfoil hat stuff I'd love to see. Mike's been the assistant coach, this Immortal Minds duo actually running the team.
That's so funny, actually.
That'd be really good to see. But I think the overall thing about Sean is he is in a position where not a lot of talent are, where he is valued in that sort of pro mindset. I almost think a lot of talent, the pro scene would be X person doesn't know anything about the game. So Sean, the fact that he can take it in that direction to be involved in the pro scene, he's going to have broadcast opportunities if he decides to come back. That door's always open for him. But that door on him actually being involved in teams and having these opportunities that are at least consistent, which something like international events are just not. Speaking from experience in Valorant, they're just not. I think it's the right thing for him to do, because it leverages him, again, talent-wise in the future. For example, if franchising happens in 2 to 3 years' time, maybe that's when Sean will come back, because that's something a bit more consistent and something that he can gain value from, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. We would treat you right, says Dapper. You know Dapper and Tens are going to be bunking for the playoffs?
Yeah, didn't know that.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe,
maybe Sean can get in as well.
The only thing that gets posted is every time Tens talks about Ping or justifying why he lives in LA. It's yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Adult male justifies why he lives in a place because he wants to.
400k views
That's
on
really
YouTube.
what that clip was. I watched that clip this morning, and it was Tens saying, I'm living in LA because there's a lot of stuff to do here, and it's better for my mental, and I like it. Yeah. And people are like, no, it was You're being forced. I don't know. It's fucking mad, isn't it? It's mad. All right. Anyway, let's talk about some North American Valorant before we go any further. So Cloud9 and V1, they ended this week going undefeated in the group. So both teams went 5-0 in their group. They both actually finished with a fairly one-sided affair as well. Cloud9, the game was 2-1 over the Guard, and V1 beat Sentinels 2-0. Let's start with the Cloud9 V1. Sorry, let's start with the Cloud9 the Guard game to begin with. Our expectations going into this, I think we all picked Cloud9. Am I right in saying that? I think we.
No,
all
actually,
right?
I picked Guard. I picked Guard. I was the dissenter.
And honestly, map 1. I felt like...
Dude, map 1 was dope.
Yeah, map 1, the Guard came out swinging. They were running the Acend comp. They got the Brimstone. They knew what they were doing. It felt more like... It actually feels currently like Bind has not changed too much from patch to patch. But Ascent and Haven definitely have. And to me, that was my big picture takeaway, was just that the Guard had done a lot of homework on Bind, but they hadn't yet fleshed out Ascent and Haven to the same degree that Cloud9 had when it came to the new meta with Omen being used.
Yeah, I was definitely feeling like they like you said, Bind was sick. Like I had the clips for this one as part of our homework.
Your homework.
Part of my homework here that Josh assigns us at the end of every week and then determines if we get a gold star or not. But I do think that overall that's the right read. They did a lot of homework when it came to Bind. They had like really, really good setups. They did some classic guard stuff where they were working map really well. The utility was always fantastic and synchronized here. And C9 very much, I think they struggled pretty heavily at times to deal with just like how aggressive they were able to just like control the map and just like hit sites off of the utility. But it wasn't like it was a bad match. It was close. It was back and forth. Like there was lots of really good moments. C9 had some really cool things where like, I believe on like if you go to round 8, Kurt, like on where they're retaking for B, and they just have like really cool nade setups, and they deny plants when they've been just taking time off.
That's the round where the nade comes over the top.
Yes.
They've got the molly, they've got the nade. Oh no, the
and then here comes the nade,
yeah.
and it just completely ruins them. And the other thing is, and look at that. I mean, like there's just like actually nothing they can do. And then they come and retake here anyways with Zeppo with the showstopper just to clean up, just to make sure they can't get the plant. And so C9 had answers. They had responses. Like it wasn't like it was by no means one-sided. It was just Guard looking really, really clean on Bind. And I think that's really the most that when we look at Bind as a whole, we can just say like, okay, it was a good map. The real story is what happens after Bind,
yes.
I feel, for Guard. Because Acend, I don't even think they've played terribly. I just feel like C9 had, like you said, they'd evolved much better, like their comps, their understandings of the maps, how they wanted to play them. And they just kind of got rolled and smoked by like Leaf and Zeta and Zeppa. Like legitimately, they just played fucking incredible. Like C9 played really, really well on the last 2 maps, and Guard just couldn't keep up. And particularly
I'm a little bit confused by why the Guard went back away from the comp, because they started putting the Sage in their Ascent comp.
They did, yeah.
After they played against Knights.
I thought they would keep the Sage in their composition here too, because it's just so obnoxious to play against. But I don't really know. I thought that would have applied a lot of pressure to Cloud9's attack half. But really, when you look at how Cloud9 run their attack half here, previously on the prior meta, I felt like Cloud9 did a lot of like burst plays into sites, and it actually didn't work very well for them. Do you remember that period of time where Cloud9 was getting like 2 attack rounds on Ascent? They were like really struggling hard on this map. And I feel like it was because they were doing a lot of pop execs into Astra Killjoy utility and really struggled with it. This was them working the map super effectively to find picks off the back of the Paranoia and Leaf. They didn't really go for those big execs either in the mid round or the late round. They kind of, they worked an advantage early on and then went in. There was one round where they just bursted in with the KO ultimate when the Guard couldn't do anything about it. But other than that, I felt like it was a really smart approach of being able to maximize Vanity's potential on the Omen and set up Leaf on Jett, which Leaf wasn't playing Jett map 1, and he came alive so fucking hard in map 2 and map 3.
Yeah, that was definitely, and I felt like that was the story as well, like when we got to Haven. But like just looking through some of the clips, like when we talk about map control, like we were actually watching the clip, Kurt. You're on the clip. Go back to round 8, Kurt, because you see like there'd be times where even in the scrappy fights after they've lost players, they'd make sure to work the map, have Mitch working through mid a lot, because I felt like there was definitely in NA comparatively to some of the EU matches I watched, there's still a lot of like mid pressure comparatively like EU when I was watching. And then they have Mitch just lurk through, get a kill. Now they can re-enter here onto site, play off Jin, and like they're still playing slow, waiting for these rotations, and they're just working every extremity still. And this is what C9 did like so often. And I felt like the return of Vanity onto the Omen what allowed them a lot of these opportunities as well, because like you said, the Paranoia, the double flash, just let them set up Leaf continuously throughout the whole series. And it continued on to Haven, where then they got the fucking triple flash comp. And it was just like, but that's not even like that's pretty meta, because that's what version 1 played as well.
Yeah, they've been playing that breach in the sky a lot more. My narratives coming into this match were like, the Guard, which have been like this massive meteoric rise in recent times in one patch. Obviously, the big question was, can they adjust? And was that experience diff of Cloud9 obviously having a lot more playtime together going to manifest itself in the series? And I think it did. But what it showcased to me is that if you give the Guard a lot of time, they are going to be able to adjust to the patch with enough time. Because their bind comp showcased that, I think. They pulled out a comp that other teams had already played, but they really do give them a bit of time to prep on a given map with an idea, with an identity and a comp, and they will succeed eventually. It's just that I don't think they had enough time going from week 4 to week 5 to not play their old comps on Ascent and Haven and things like that. They basically had to stick with their default stuff, which had been heavily nerfed, and they're playing against Cloud9 that are really experienced and so good at being able to just essentially swap out one key piece. Like, the big thing I had coming into it was the Guard rely a ton on the Astra, and then when she was nerfed, I was like, oh, how's it gonna work out for them?
I do also think though that one of the undersold elements of the Guard's run is how hot their players are, like the form right now. And I fear that this meta will put a dampener on that form, because instead of just feeling mega confident, you can't lose, you're dueling everybody, you're overwhelming them with utility, you feel like you're hitting every shot. If you have a period of time after that hot streak where you have to take a break, refigure your comps, you're losing a little bit more, and then getting back up to that level, your confidence gets knocked, I think. Or at least it's likely that that could happen. And one of the things that I was noticing a lot between map 1 and map 3 was that in map 1, all of those mid-round moments where someone takes a duel, the Guard were winning them. They were actually skill diffing Cloud9 a lot. And I think it's that confidence, the feeling that you can just never lose. They're swinging, they take the shot, they hit it. In the final 2 maps, especially map 3, it felt like every one of those pivotal mid-round duels was going the other way. And so even though Cloud9 had set up the rounds really well and they'd done the strategic stuff a lot better, even the mid-round just dueling that had previously been going the way of the Guard, now Cloud9 were winning it. And it meant that they went from Haven is the Guard's best map and they got blown out. What was it, 13-2 or something?
Yeah.
13-3?
Yeah, it was a destruction. It was actually like, but the thing is, I don't even think they played incredibly poorly. It's just C9 just beat them at the game. Like they actually legitimately just outplayed them on every level. But I don't think they were even playing that bad. Like I look at how Guard was playing, and they were still getting frags. They still had like good ideas. It's just they got outpaced, they got out tempoed, they got out stratted, and they got out fragged. Like honestly, like I feel still confident in the Guard moving forward here. It's just clear that C9 are just. It's also the individual skill of C9 is just fucking bananas. Like Kurt, go to round 12 with the title it's titled Korean Breach. Go to round 12, and it's Zeta just. I mean, look at this. Like, and this is C9. Once in these mid rounds are so good because they're playing the 2v3 retake, and they make sure even though they don't get any kills there from that flank, Zeta still plays here in sewers. He gets the solo ults, gets the 3K, gets the clutch. Like, it's just it's such a good adjustment for them to make sure to rotate back through long so they can give Zeta some. It's dangerous. It's a risky play because they could have just doubled up and killed him really quickly, but he had the utility to work off it, and they did stuff like that all the time where the utility just fucking dominated them on Haven in particular. On Haven in particular, the triple flash setup was just crushing them like so often. Yeah. And then even then, like, he just walks in off the fault line here, the fault line from B. He walks out, goes back there, and then they set him up here again. Because sure, there's a fight happening here, but then Leaf is already here again, and he just gets like 3 kills. Like, it's just fucking disgusting.
Yeah,
it's just fucking disgusting, man.
It is, yeah. Okay, so the other big match on the other side of things was version 1 playing against Sentinels, and version 1 had finished that undefeated. I was the only person to go for a punt on Sentinels, and I wish I hadn't. I said last week, the only reason I was going for Sentinels was because of the new patch, and version 1 not only adapted to the new patch really well, but it just didn't help Sentinels. It was the same old problems. So I shan't be doing that ever again. No faith anymore. I shall just predict the better team instead of trying to predict patch results. Version 1 looked... I know that each map was relatively close, but version 1 looked far superior, I think. I guess the first map wasn't close, but it started close. It was like 3-3 at the beginning, and I was like, oh, maybe it's looking all right. And then version 1 just ran away with it. Yeah. Haven did end up being close. I think it was 13-11, yeah. So, but even on Haven, it just felt like version 1 were by far the better team.
Yeah, they definitely felt way, like, I think on Ascent in particular, they were miles ahead of them. I also had way more clips for Ascent, but I realized that Kurt was like asking for our predictions, and I tabbed out of the comment I was editing, so I lost all the clips, and so I had to go back and re-add them. But I have a couple here still. But like moments, like I feel like in general, moments like this where V1 was just clean on Ascent. They were just clean. Like I don't even think this was like something where they were necessarily out-fragging them or getting like unlucky mid-round picks or like that. Like V1 just they consistently had good site hits, and it's something that makes them so deadly as a team and potentially like the best team in North America right now is because they're just monsters on attack. They always get I mean, I said they work teams like pizza dough, and this is once again a multiple bene situation because fucking Sentinels are they had no map control at any point. The rehits from V1 where they do that classic, they back up, force a lot of util, then they just wait, re-hit the site afterwards, and Sentinels just had no answer to it, like most of the time on a Sint. And then even going on to Haven, that happened like several different times.
Dude, V1 are real though.
They are absolutely
point,
the real deal. They look like it looks like Cloud9 and version 1 should be going to Reykjavik.
That's what it feels like, doesn't it? It definitely feels like it. I mean, yeah, V1 just something about it as well. Them playing their older comp that theoretically is weaker compared to what Sentinels are running because they're running the Omen in comparison, and yet they don't feel limited by it because it wasn't the comp that was carrying them in a lot of times. The comp enables them really well in terms of their set plays and shit, but just the clean fundamentals, a little pop flash, three of them swing, the spacing is perfect so they can't all get sprayed down. Like it's the drilled in fundamentals of V1 that make them so goddamn scary.
But then Xander was nasty on the Omen when he played it on Haven too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're like
It was.
It's not like Xander is now lacking.
Dude, Xander Xander. I can't remember who tweeted this after this game, but I absolutely agree with it. It was one of the pros. Tweeted that Xander is the most impactful pickup of the offseason. Yeah. And I 100% agree. And I can't think. I mean, maybe like the formation of Loud in Brazil or Onslayers in Korea or something could compete. But if
I think Trent is like in the categories. I think Trent is in the category. Would I say he beats out Xander? Also, the cool thing about this play too is that Zelsis absolutely KO Diff Sick this entire series. And this is like one of those moments again where like Sick is getting ready to pop the KO to walk in, so they have no util, and Zelsis just immediately popped it before, so now they have no util to re-clear, and that's why Xander's able to get this ace. Because their entire plan gets demolished by Zelsis.
When they were in the opposite scenario as well, there was a round, I can't exactly remember which one it was, but we were casting it, and Zelsis was defending A, and both of the KOs had ult again, and Zelsis is just holding his ult, waiting for the sound cue from Sick. So that as soon as Sick pops his ult, he has like a second before the pulse hits him, maybe less, to hit his ult, and both teams are suppressed. And if he doesn't have that presence of mind to be like, finger on the button of his ultimate.
Just holding in his hands.
Yeah, he's literally just holding it, waiting to go. Then his team just completely loses that round. I think that was the round where it ended up being a 1v2 and Zelsis ended up losing anyway. But the point being, the thought process is like really fucking good from Zelsis right now. I think it's between him and Zeppa for who the best KO in the world is actually currently.
Mm-hmm. And then you see here just like for retakes, like now this is just funny because Tins is like trying to play the edge of the smoke. And he's just full blind. But like it's just their util is good. Their util is so good. The triple flash comp on Haven is definitely looking pretty meta because it allows you to set up your Jett incredibly. Like there's just so, especially when you fall off the paranoia where you can just clear out a whole channel of the map as like you enter, it just, when you have 3 flashes, it's fucking nasty. So it is really cool to see V1. I think they are the real deal for sure.
I just want to blast some stats at you that I said a little bit during the show as well, just to showcase how ridiculous version 1 are.
Numbers.
Before this match, so I haven't run the numbers afterwards, they average an 8-4 half on attack. That's already nuts. Mm-hmm. They average 10 post plants out of 12 for their attack half. So they get the spike down 10 out of 12 times on average. And then they're also, their win rate when they are down a player is 47%. That's like,
what's the average?
The average is 28.
I think it's about,
The average is like 25 to 28. When I ran it last year, it was 28. Apparently, people are saying it's now 25. But like, holy fuck. If you're only supposed to win those rounds a quarter of the time, and you're like a fraction off winning them a half of the time, your win rate would be half. Like, if you thought your opponent was as good as you're expected to win half the time, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're winning half the time, even if you're down a player, that's
insane.
Madness.
There's another one as well, where they're in 5v4s. I think they have the biggest win rate there as well. So
their
when they
5v4 conversion is 84%.
God.
And that's the highest out of EMEA teams as well, because I was curious to see who was doing the most, because I think of like FPX as a team that when they're in 5v4 situations, they weren't very good at capitalizing, right? So I was curious to see who was the cleanest. And in a lot of those kind of like scenarios, version 1 is ridiculously high when it comes to like those kind of stats.
And just shows how regimented they are too. If you just constantly convert off of picks or like you're down a person, it just means that you are just more drilled than anyone else.
I've run these kind of stats before for Champions in Berlin, and the teams that normally put up those numbers are teams like Vision Strikers that dominate their own region, and they don't have as much competition. So, okay, it bears the question, did version 1 have no competition? They went undefeated in Group B, and then you think about the teams they faced.
Absolutely not.
Sentinels, Optic, Rise was in a slump. It doesn't feel like they went undefeated.
But yeah, Rise had ups and downs. I can't remember if they...
it doesn't feel like they went uncontested. Sorry, they did go undefeated. Yeah,
did they have their... I don't know. The point is, Group B was absolutely the hardest group, I think.
Apart from Cloud9. I don't think the Guard or Acend were pushovers either.
No, absolutely not. But in terms of
it's
the peaks that I saw out of Optic, were just...
Optic's map win over version 1
The peaks that we saw from Optics, Knights are improving week on week on week. NRG were having incredibly close matches between a lot of these teams. And then
the game against version 1 was their closest.
Yeah, and then Rise were just this hot and cold team that,
they kind
of fell over a little bit, but yeah, in the end... Yeah, without a doubt in my mind, I think Group B is the hardest, and they're 5-0, and they're dominant in it.
Yeah, 5-0 and putting up stats like you wouldn't believe. Like if you just looked based on stats, you'd expect version 1 to be the best team in North America right now. But I think that conversation is a big question until they face Cloud9, just because of how good Cloud9 are also looking. You've got two amazing players right now. Just the players as well. Leaf and Penny have both been nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Wardell?
Okay, let's talk about the teams on the wrong side of these matches though a little bit. So the Guard and Sentinels. We were talking about the patch impact, and I think we've covered the Guard quite a bit in terms of how they adapted to the patch. But what about Sentinels? I was expecting them to benefit from this patch. I think Anders, when he was on Valoranting, said if Sentinels don't succeed on patch 4.04, they are a tier 2 team. And while that's a deliberately inflammatory take, I think if we consider tier 1 to be the teams you think have a chance of winning this or going to Reykjavik or something like that, Sentinels kind of do look like they're on the outside looking in right now. They look like maybe the 6th best team in North America. You could make an argument for 5th, something like that. What was your read on them in that version 1 game? How do you think they're going to be looking as they head into playoffs?
I personally thought that I don't know. We only saw 2 maps out of them, right? So it's but we've seen so much of their other play coming up to this point to where when you compare it to version 1, it felt like they didn't have nearly as much execute, like in particular attack halves. Like what happened a lot is like they would get bogged in chokes frequently, because their utility would be staggered often. It wouldn't all come out at once, and that's something that like when you compare it to version 1 and how they hit sites. The reason they're so effective is because their util is extremely drilled. And it hits at the same time. They're into the site. And Sentinel still struggles pretty heavily, I think, to get onto sites and like hits where they have to get all their util out and set up 10s. And I feel like that's like happening a lot to them. I'm like, well, first of all, like, I don't know. Does that even already from that, if you can't even like hit sites with like properly timed util, if you're struggling with that at times, it is going to be tough to like really get better. I think just like win a LAN type of situation.
Your cat's adorable.
Yes. What do you want?
You don't have to be a dick to the cat.
No, it's because I'm just
came in and was like, I still think they're the best team in North America.
She doesn't like to be ignored while we're at the PC.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
The thing that I remember or recall from Sentinels as well in this new patch was already I thought the patch would suit them as well because it's almost like a bit of a hard reset in terms of the thing that they struggled with in Champs was playing against these teams that had set up these big trap plays that were really punishing them. The thing that the meta has developed to was like teams having those ideas that they can layer into their already fantastic fundamentals or overall game plans. And they kind of fell behind in that in terms of just the evolution of the game over the last few months, in my opinion. I mean, some say it's because they weren't practicing. They're disputing that. But I do think it's pretty evident just watching the games that there is a bit of a gulf between them and other teams when it comes to that, comfortability when it comes to that. But the meta was supposed to reset that to a degree.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it as much. And also, it wasn't helped that I think it got compounded. You know, TenZ, if we look at the stats of this match, I don't know if you saw the VLR
17.
page. Yeah, TenZ did not have a good game, and he posted afterwards that he said that essentially, I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but like his confidence was knocked essentially. He got into his own head about the ping situation.
Yeah.
He wasn't blaming it on ping, saying like, I lost because of ping. He was acknowledging that there's this mental obstacle in his head when it comes to playing on higher ping that makes him play worse.
Yeah.
That
is a key distinction, though.
Yeah, make sure you understand the difference there, because it's him acknowledging it, that it's kind of like a silly thing to worry over, but listen, the human brains we're full of silly, champ. We're full of it. Like, seriously, you can convince yourself of weird shit, and like sometimes that is something that can knock you. And if it compounds onto the fact that you're not being enabled because your team is not as drilled on this patch, and it's not like V1 showed an excellent example of, here's a tweet here, it says, make my mental go boom. The V1 played a lot of role comps, but also ended up just kind of swapping out one or two pieces, which is Xander playing the Omen, and it still worked because they had really well-drilled fundamentals from just playing constantly recently, and they're really good at just adapting and playing off of Zealous' own flashes and the paranoia. The stuff that they try can easily be adapted with just one small change, whereas Sentinels, I don't know, they hadn't really put in the legwork beforehand, and the one thing they had going for them was that big grand reset, that flattening of the playing field, kind of, where Astra starts to fall out of meta. With time, I think they could get there, but they don't have time.
No.
It's playoffs starting on Thursday.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to make Reykjavik. I think, you know...
It doesn't look likely, does it?
No. They are, in some sense, the spiritual defenders of that trophy, though I suppose it is Acend, and we'll talk about Acend later on because they are the defending champions from champions. But because Iceland was the first international event of 2021, and then Iceland is the first international event of 2022, I kind of think about Sentinels as being the team that's almost defending that in a weird way, even though there have been other winners since then. And I don't think it's likely they're going to make it. I think Cloud9 version 1 clearly look like better teams right now. Their opening matches against the Guard could definitely win that. And then they're going to have to face other teams like Optic along the path. And I think that's going to be extremely difficult for them. They just don't look like they're in a position to win currently.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think they're going to make it. They look overall, it's really not even a talent issue. Like Zombs, I still think look pretty comfortable on like Omen, returning to Omen here.
Yeah. Like
they had some cool ideas. Like they just have less set plays than some of the top teams. They're not as drilled with like hitting sites, and they give up a lot. They also give up a lot of picks, honestly. They give a lot of picks, but some of that could have just been TenZ getting into his own head because of the ping situation. So it just didn't seem like a team that's going to win Iceland again. So once again, North America takes another fat L, and we will never take any more W's again, Sag.
Okay, let's go on to talking about the predictions then, because we have our North American quarterfinals set up, the upper quarters. Before we get into the actual predictions, though, I believe we need to do a bit of a recap.
Oh.
Now, Ryan, you're our guest here, so we're not going to roast you, but we normally do a recap of how people's prior predictions have gone, you know?
I see.
And have we got like a guest slot, or have we got a Bala slot? Does it still show Bala stuff? Oh, Kurt says we'll see.
Oh, can I butcher Bala's predictions?
What an incredible picture of Ryan.
That's nice.
I'm surprised I'm
even.
even.
You know what I remember the moment because they were taking the pictures, and like whilst we were in the studio, the games were on like the pistol round. And it was the first time that we ever saw that Team Liquid Neon comp on Haven. And it was just Yinsu going, right, Ryan, react to that composition. And I pulled that face. I like the comp in the end, but yeah, I think I have a very memeable face. That's the only thing that's going for me right now.
I'm surprised I led with my punt on Sentinels.
Well,
some people will make another punt.
You make a singular punt. I make many. So
we are not the same.
The Guard boomed me. I'm taking the straight to MCE for my belief in them.
Listen,
So,
I'll take above 50%.
Exactly. Yeah, you're better than a coin flip, I suppose, depending on what the coin is.
I'll take that, man. I'll take that.
Okay, let's take a look at the actual preds then. So we've got our first match of the quarterfinals is Cloud9 taking on Knights. So everyone's going with Cloud9. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a hope in hell for Knights here.
Well,
really,
so
right?
actually, I do have a question about this match. Does it matter? Does C9 have to win this to lock in their first seed from their group, or are they already locked in?
What? The dickens are you talking about? It's playoffs, mate.
Oh my god! Wait, what am I? Yeah, I forgot. Oh shit! My brain.
You're lost.
My brain.
Never
mind.
lost in the format last year. Qualifiers going into qualifiers.
Never mind.
We're just assuming that
I forgot we're in playoffs.
Qualifier.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I forgot.
Okay. So yeah, take a look at what's on your screen right now, viewers. It is the upper quarterfinals. So this is now the path to Reykjavik. Lose 2 and you're gone. You have to win all the way through this bracket.
Yeah. I was for some reason I was like, oh yeah, we're still in the infinite group stages. So like it's not ending. So like Knights, like C9's playing their 20th group stage match of the month, and they're gonna have to
I'm
like.
laughing because it's relatable.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Well, I
think
frequently have the brain fog take over, Connor. Don't worry.
Okay, so the next game is a banger, actually. It's Optic Gaming taking on Acend. And we've all gone for Optic here, actually. But I still think it's a damn good game. Especially with Optic struggling a little bit in their games. They lost to Rise. They lost to version 1. Although they blasted version 1 on one of the maps and then dropped out. I don't know. It's a weird time to watch Optic. I feel like the peaks of Optic have been some of the best gameplay we've seen in North America.
Yeah. And
like the maps where they win, they play phenomenally.
Definitely have some confidence issues in terms of if they get knocked in a map, regaining their footing is a big thing for Optic, I think, moving forward. Because they've showcased that they can hang with the best when they're playing really confidently. Everybody is swinging, taking fights, winning them. But then there was the last series that they played, I think it was the last series that they played, again, when they tested out the Haven comp.
Yeah, that was against
V1. It was in week 4. That was a big eye-opener for me, because Acend, they dominated. If you look at Acend, look at the scoreline.
13-2.
Yeah. They absolutely dominated. They rolled version 1. Insane performance from them. Everybody's popping off. And then Haven comes out. They pull out the wacky composition with the neon. It didn't look well versed. And it highlighted a weakness for Optic for me, when before I thought that this team was looking unstoppable for that number 1 seed in their group. And so, yeah, I don't know if that's going to rear its head in this match. It could.
The reason... Go on, Ryan.
I was just going to say, I had to double check. I did predict Acend, but it was based off nothing. I haven't seen the games because we had like EMEA, like 2 A stream and B stream to catch up on, but I went for Acend based entirely off of nothing because, and I did have a question as well. Like, obviously, EMEA is not playing on patch 4.04. We're still on the old one, so it's always really fun to watch the likes of the old Icebox, for example. That's really fun. I'm enjoying myself a lot when we have overtime games on there. Obviously, like Brimstone and like Omen, they're gonna be the agents that get the most upgrade in pick rate. What were the secondary agents that weren't buffed or nerfed that maybe surprised you in regards to like how much they were played or how little they were played? Because it seemed like Breach,
I think
for
Breach
example,
is one of them. Yeah, absolutely. Seems like people are more inclined to use Breach because you can use your Breach utility and scale off it because you don't get stopped by a suck or something like that. And so it seems like the flash comps, especially in North America, are becoming more meta. Astra dipped. I ran the stats on the pick rates. Just off the top of my head, it was something like Astra went from 75% to about 28%. So massive drop, like nearly a third of the pick rate of Astra. And then Brimstone and Omen both went from essentially 0 playtime, although a couple of people dabbled with Brim in NA. They went from essentially 0 to being somewhere around like 20-40% pick rate. You can see Brim is at 20 and Omen's at 40.
In like Killjoy at all? Since we're like, I'm wondering if people have started to use Killjoy to try to lock down chokes.
Yeah, there was a marginal increase in Killjoy play rate, but nothing massive. I think that was contributed though to a reduction in Chamber pick rate. People were going crazy with Chamber in patch 4.03, and now people are cooling off with him.
Learning where it's more applicable to run him, as opposed to running him on everything.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. But the reason that I favor Optic in this match, to bring it back to Optic Acend, is not only have their peaks been great, but the map pool is so good for them. Acend love playing on Bind. Acend are undefeated on Bind, but Optic have showcased, I think, the best Bind gameplay we've actually seen in North America. And I think they are likely to dismantle Acend in the same way that they dismantled Sentinels. So if Exec pick their favorite map into Optic, that's going to be a problem. Optic tend to ban Breeze anyway, which is Exec's second favorite map. So you might get rolled on your favorite. They're going to ban your second favorite, and then where do you go there? Where does Exec go to try and get an advantage in the map veto? It's going to be tough, I think. So the next game that we've got coming up, version 1 LG. And oh my word, this one's tight. Who will we be predding? Oh, it's all version 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's a snoozer.
Wow, North America kind of like easy picks this first. But I mean, it makes sense because...
It's always the ones you think are easy picks that the upsets happen. This is
I'm going to be honest, I can't think of one yet.
This is coming from the undisputed buy-around millionaire. So... you got to trust me on this one.
You are essentially role-playing as Zoms when you play the buy round.
Yeah, but you're not the undisputed buy-around millionaire. You're essentially just some guy throwing crazy bets, and eventually, like, you're hoping the government bailout is going to help you one time.
It's Wall Street bets kind of moments. That's what Bren does with his approach in the co-streams. All right, the final game, though, of the quarterfinals is, I think, the best game of the quarters. It's the Guard against Sentinels. On the new patch... And Bren has gone with Sentinels. The other three of us gone with the Guard, and I'm telling you, I didn't feel confident about this. So Bren, shoot me the Sentinels.
The entire time during the Sentinels struggling with the new patch, I basically just said, man, they don't have enough time. They were struggling. They haven't really done any of the foundation, the legwork. But this is more based off of, I think, the Guard showcase that they are still a pretty prep-heavy team. And I think... the lack of time to prep for the new patch will hurt the Guard more than it will Sentinels, if that makes sense. Because they showcased that they put a lot of time into bind and they short that up. Great pick for them. But the other maps were still kind of lacking. And I think it compounded a little bit with just the confidence in it. Because the team is so... I don't want to call it a honeymoon phase, but it's very much like... these guys were just on a streak of just popping the fuck off. But Trent had one of his worst games ever in that second map in their series. I think he got 3 kills overall after he'd been previously playing really well. And there's a risk of that kind of inexperience rearing its head in this series. I've seen teams before play against Sentinels. Constantly, we've been talking about Sentinels as this team that is underperforming. And it feels like they have this fucking plot armor where they go up against teams and you think there's a chance of the upset, and for whatever reason, teams get in their own heads when they play against Sentinels. And I think it's because of this just the aura of the fact that these guys were the top dogs in North America in 2021. That when you were trying to make it in the scene, you were looking at this team win it all, and now you're playing against them. It's a bit of a hurdle to get over in your mind when you're playing against this team, despite the fact that Sentinels have been looking a bit more sloppy recently. And so for those reasons, I went with the punt on Sentinels. I still stand by the points I was making, where I think that there's not enough time really for Sentinels to shore up.
This is you more predicting the Guard mental collapse.
Not a bit. I don't want to say mental collapse. I want to say like inexperience,
right?
Rearing its head and not having enough time to put that really solid prep work that put them above and beyond a lot of other teams.
Yeah,
that's my take on this series.
I think it's fair, and it's also part of the argument that I was making last week for Sentinels maybe being favored over version 1. Obviously, not the like inexperienced part, because version 1 are very experienced, but Sentinels just being a bit better when it comes to the patch. I think this is extremely valid. I just refuse to take another punt on Sentinels after they let me down this week. And the Guards buying did look genuinely incredibly good.
It did, yeah. It looked good.
Yeah, if it happened earlier, I think if this was like, if we had removed the last week of group stages and just suddenly this is the first week, right? And like we're playing right now on this patch and Sentinels and Guard are playing, I'd be like, okay, sure. But I think the more reps, since Guard has had a week to get some reps in, they're going to be stronger. Like they're just like an algorithm. You just got to put them through, give them enough data sets, and eventually they're going to be downloaded. So I'm not too worried about them.
I've just realized what your room reminds me of, Connor.
What?
It's an episode of Black Mirror. It's like a future where art is now optional, or like people look down.
Art is optional.
People look down.
First of all, art is already optional.
But it's like,
art is already an optional thing.
You've got a very like Unit 5210 report to your desk.
It's just because I haven't put on.
I love 1984.
I just haven't put the fucking Kadinsky up on the wall.
You
yet,
need to put the Kadinsky up, I think.
Yeah,
I know.
because
and then
apparently you work in a prison and you sleep in a prison.
It requires 2 people. It's a large painting, and I don't have
two people to hang up a painting.
It's a big painting.
Huh?
It's a big painting. It's
Okay.
a really big painting. You don't understand the scale of it. You haven't seen it.
Anyway,
You haven't seen the
there
scale.
aren't any
I
other
can't
inmates
wait
that
for
can
the
help you?
next episode.
No, I live by myself.
I'm going to be an
All right.
avid viewer just to see when that painting goes up now.
I know.
I'm going to turn on the episode. If it's not there, I'm going to close it. I'm going to come back when
Yeah,
it's
well, I
Exactly.
don't
Your
often
shit's gonna
do the
tank,
podcast
Fauna.
from home. So that's the thing. You don't get very many options. You're gonna just get like months of snapshots. Like every 3-4 months, you'll see.
Right. That does it for North America then. So let's move on to the region that had by far and away the most games this week, which was EMEA. Now, Ryan, do you want to give us a little TLDR on why EMEA had 1,000 games happening today? And we're going to start with a topic about Acend.
Yeah, it's touchy to say the very least. I think the main thing overall is just the postponement because of the whole Ukrainian crisis. And then it's a case of I don't really know what the reasoning was, but there could have definitely been a world where Gambit would just disqualified or whatever, right? Like it was them that got postponed the most to the point where they've had to go by a new name, which I think is
Sure.
probably the most notable thing coming into this. But also they have 3 games back to back for the next broadcast days, which I think have been announced. So basically, by the time that the podcast is out, the games will be happening. So
Sure.
it shouldn't be too much of a surprise unless things completely differ away. But yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. It kind of messed with teams like Guild, who would have like Trex on the roster, for example. Obviously screwed over FPX that have a Ukrainian player of Angel who is still there and has had to flee his city and is currently safe, which is good, but still in a war zone, frankly.
Yeah,
So,
he posted a picture this morning of I think it was his girlfriend's grandmother's house, just on fire.
on fire.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
it's terrifying,
burning.
really.
Just burning.
And I think as well, like a lot of people here, especially like it being based in Germany, which isn't really too far away. The best way I've had it described is just like a mental debuff on everybody. Like I think everybody's so tired as well. So
Sure.
a lot of games to catch up on. I do respect the fact that like we've tried to keep to the schedule as much as possible, especially with like A stream and B stream games. So now, yeah, we should be finishing up with our group stages this week and then playoffs next week. And also, it's on the old patch too. So there's a lot to catch up on.
Sure. It definitely feels like it injected some chaos into the EMEA results this week because when I was trying to keep up, I wasn't able to watch all of the EMEA games, but I watched this one, and it felt like every time, I'm either prepping for the North American broadcast or I was streaming some Elden Ring or something, and someone would come into the chat and be like, did you see this upset result happen? And I was like, wait, what the fuck? Did you see this upset result happen? Wait, what the fuck? What the hell is going on over there in EMEA? Because I felt like the hierarchy was decently structured before this week, and then it's all just been blown up. The biggest news being that reigning champions Acend have not made it. They have been grouped. They lost to Fnatic and BBL in back-to-back games, winning only a single map, and have now finished in, behind BBL. Both of the Turkish teams were like 0-3 or something until very recently. And now Acend are second to last.
Yeah.
They are not going to be qualifying for Masters 1. They can't get into the playoffs. And that also means that we will not, again, have back-to-back champions of any Masters events. We haven't had that at all in Valorant so far.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling in EMEA, right? Because with all the postponements and the fact that it's all being played on the old patch as well means that, well, I'm just thinking in terms of not only like, I imagine a lot of scrims probably being disrupted as well, just with everything going on in EMEA. People getting subs in
Very
for players,
possibly.
teams not knowing whether or not they're playing or not. And then they're playing on the old patch. So when they're scrimming, they can't even scrim on.
No, I think you
right?
can scrim on the tournament client, but
Yeah,
you might not
and
be
there's
able to
also
get
a lot
all
of
your
like
opponents.
Yeah, there's a lot of regional league teams as well that are prepping for their playoffs. So the tournament client for scrims is it'd be worse, I think, if we went to the new patch because it would be only the VCT teams that would be scrimming. Whereas now you could have gone up against like Giants or Alliance who are in these regional
so
leagues.
they're still on the old patch with the
fight.
regionals?
Yes, yeah, and I think they are for
Okay.
playoffs, but I could be wrong. Like
Right.
they're all this
That-
week as well. There's a
That does
lot
help.
going on.
I was thinking based off of NA, where it's only the VCT teams who want to practice on the old patch, I guess, prior to it. Anyway,
Yeah, possibly. I mean, for Acend as well, that these kind of situations were compounded by the fact that Zeke has taken a break, right? Too. Zeke put out a tweet longer where he was talking about some mental health issues that he's been having for a while now, and he seemed a bit embarrassed to share, and like it had been difficult for him to even open up about that kind of stuff, which I always it's always a really important breakthrough when people are able to be open about it, not with the public, I don't mean that, but with your team or with somebody or with like a support person that can actually help you through it. So it seems like he's been going through a pretty tough time. He didn't go into, exactly what, but he said a few days ago, due to a lot of things that happened at the same day, something broke inside me. I'm currently at my worst. And he was talking about how embarrassed he feels kind of sharing it, but he just wanted to let people know what's going on, why he hasn't been playing up to his old form. And it is just so important to acknowledge what's going on in your head. Just because it's only going on in your head doesn't mean it's not real. It is absolutely real, and you need to deal with it. It should be top priority.
Yeah. I'm a big advocate for talking about mental health problems, in particular with men, because there's a stigma against talking about it.
Sure.
Because, I mean, you can kind of see it within the writing. It's the feeling of embarrassment that you're talking about it. It's not. It's completely valid. Like, a lot of people go through it. Many people go through it.
Yeah, tons of people.
So, yeah, I really do hope that Zeke ends up getting through a lot of his problems, and he comes back in a much better mental state,
So Acend, when they played for BBL, they had Purpo filling in, who is currently the number one player in EMEA. I don't know his previous competitive history, Ryan. Is he just a ranked demon, or did he play for teams?
As far as I remember, he's also Gambit stand-in as well. Like, he's just a player that has a reputation of being fantastic, just another crack CIS player. I did want to say as well, like, credit to Acend for like letting Zeke not play in that final game against BBL, knowing full well that it could really hamper their chances of getting to playoffs, right? The fact that they went, we want Zeke to sort of take this break, knowing full well that BBL game is such a difficult one to prepare for, when you also have all of this stuff going on, and then you have a stand-in to play such a pivotal role on a team like Purpo did. Saying that, he did pretty well there overall, but it really, like, to set the tone, G2 at the start of the day, we were like, it's such a thin line for them to actually qualify for playoffs, because they need to beat Guild, and then BBL somehow needs to beat Acend, which is exactly what ended up happening, right?
Both upset results as well.
Or one after the other, right? Because, the G2 game was on the A stream, and this was on the B stream, and I think it says enough when you look at the map pool. Like, Haven, the permaban for Acend for the longest period of time, is in the map pool, and Acend got dumpstered on not only against BBL, but the day before against Fnatic. They had 2 games, 2 days in a row because of all of these stacked up. So even just going up to the map ban, Acend got boomed so hard on Fracture by Guild, they started permabanning that instead. Yeah. And it felt like they had to really catch up and prep. At Champions, it wasn't a really good showing either. But this whole meta shift, well, not meta shift, the maps shifting from banning out Fracture, it meant that BBL and Fnatic could exploit Haven. And also, Acend's bind, after losing against G2 a week ago, wasn't looking that convincing either. It was only really split and bind that Acend could rely on. The rest of the map pool just started to disappear for them, really, and they didn't have a leg to stand on, which is kind of the way that all of these teams go when they fall out of favor. They have one really good map that they're strong at, but as soon as that falls, it's a bit of a house of cards with everything else when it comes to the maps and the comps.
Yeah, I've been talking for a while about Ascend's map pool and how poor it is, and I think actually that was a bigger deal than Zeke being out. I don't think it was the addition of Purpo. I mean, I think Purpo's KO utility usage didn't look particularly good, like how he was using it for the team, but he's still a fragger and he was still getting, work done on that role. But their map pool is just not good enough to win right now. The Ascent is their 3rd best map, and it's still pretty poor. They're 2-2 this year on their 3rd best map, and they're 7-3 since Berlin. So they're barely, what is that, 60, 68%, something like that. So it's kind of mad to me that they just don't have an Icebox or a Breeze. They just don't. Those maps just don't exist in their map pool, and they are perma losing at the Haven and Fracture, both of them. So I wanted to focus a little bit on Ascent though as well. So after this clip, I have some others that I wanted to pull up from Acend just to kind of talk about not just their game against BBL, but the game against Fnatic too, and like where it all started to go wrong. Because there's still some great parts about this team, but I think it's got to a point where Acend actually need to be making some changes. Otherwise, the team that won champions this year is going to be in a similar scenario to a Sentinels or something. They're not. Yeah. They're in a different boat, but I mean in terms of their fall off, you know.
I think the meta changed at the nick of time, though. Like, the whole problem, I suppose, that Acend have been running into was Bone Cold could not / would not play Astra, to the point that Starkzo had to move over to that role, and Bone Cold to be playing the Brimstone on maps like Bind, for example, or he'd be playing Sova. Now that we're going back to a spot where you can play Brimstone a lot more, even on maps that he was never typically good on in the first place, and with new maps being introduced, like, say, Fracture, he can also go back to the Omen where he had a good amount of success beforehand.
Absolutely.
That I feel for the most part, like, obviously from speaking to the Acend players, they're super disappointed, like, all of this has happened. But also thinking about it, they won champions, which was kind of out of the stretch of the imagination. Everybody re-signed other than CNED, I think initially, to, I guess, see what offers came up, like 100 Thieves or whatever. Then that was rectified, the team re-signed. And then pretty much straight away, they went into protecting their crown for stage 1. So I feel like a break is well-deserved at this point.
Yeah, unnecessary.
And they've had a pretty crazy couple of months for the most part. But it is still like they wouldn't have any excuses coming back into stage 2. They've had that respite. They have a bit of a better meta overall. They could fix some of their map issues. Like their bind comp might get even stronger now, considering like we saw C9 and stuff running it earlier. It seems that it almost augmented that whole Brimstone Sage race composition, right? So I feel good for Ascend's future overall. They're very good at bouncing back even from last year. But it did feel that everything kind of hit at the wrong time, especially with everything that's going on in Europe as a region, right? It's just that Acend were hit monstrably hard with all of that stuff.
Yeah. Starting with the Acend Fnatic game, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. So if you look at the map pool, right, for Acend Fnatic, the reason they don't win a map in this match is because Split was the decider. They would have won Split. I'm really confident about it. But they're still not going to be able to win the series unless they actually win on Ascent. And they picked Ascent so that they got that better, like, third map, you know, the middle map between the two teams. They end up losing 13-10 here. And it's the middle of both teams' map pool. Fnatic are not amazing at it either. But I think Fnatic have done a ton of really good things. So we don't have a specific comment, like a segment about Fnatic, but they are at the top of their group right now and looking like the best team. Honestly, the best team that's currently playing right now in EMEA. So I wanted to launch in just to talk a little bit about how they ended up beating Acend. So the first clip that I've got from this game, Kurt, if you wouldn't mind pulling that up, is from round 5. Because I wanted to focus a bit on Boaster. Boaster is a player that isn't known for these like big, flashy, killing kind of sprees, right? But he's actually picked up the flex role. Look at his position on the minimap right now. He's holding all the way at the back of B. And as they drone the Jett out, he's going to throw a flash over the top of this building to combo with a pull. Look, this smoke being retracted here, flash, and it catches Starzo just a tad too early, but that level of like combo initiation is what Boaster was doing all around the map. He had like a knife that went from tree over to B main. His knives are fantastic. He's gotten super nerdy with all of the flashes, and he's just really smart in how he takes fights as well. And it's opened up Bravaf to play the Sova. So Fnatic have got a really good thing going right now in an unusual way with a very kind of supportive flex player that you don't see very often. Mm-hmm. But they were looking pretty hot here. Overall, though, it's Durka CNED that this game ends up coming down to, I think. And Durka's just been on the most outrageous hot streak ever since we said he was not a top 20 player at Champions. I mean, he's just actually been phenomenal. Yeah. His online play leading up to Champions was not good. That's why we were saying he didn't look like a top 20 player. And then at Champions, I guess something just ignited inside of him, and he's kept it going the whole time, all through this stage as well. He looks like a freak. If you pull up round 16, Kurt, I'm not going to like talk over it particularly, but round 16, round 22, it's just Durka destroying. So he just comes into catwalk, they sync it with a flash from Boaster, and Boaster's job is to set up Durka in these scenarios, and then Durka just takes duels and pounds.
I think this kind of setup works really well. Was supposed to play in a breach for them on Haven?
Yes.
They played Haven, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he played breach.
Yeah, the that kind of central role where you're playing the initiator as like an IGL player calling plays, I think to support your players coming in is a really powerful position to play from the IGL. Sounds like a weird point to make, but plenty of IGLs have said that they find it way easier to comm from that kind of position where they are a lot of the plays are centered around their utility combos or their information that they gather.
How does he win that?
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't
insane.
But CNED is trying, man. I mean, CNED is trying so fucking hard. He honestly was owning in this game as well, but the team around him is just not able to do it enough, you know? It feels like the rest of Acend are in a serious slump, apart from Bind and Split. Like, when they get onto the other maps, it feels like the rest of Acend just can't do anything, and CNED is always there, always trying to put up his best performance, still looking like an absolute beast-level player. But one of the people that I wanted to talk a bit about, too, from Acend that I think is causing issues for them, I feel like it might be the end for Keyless. I don't know what you feel, Ryan, but if you just look at Keyless's stats here, obviously he's -14, but if you pull up this one and click 90 days, because that covers the time period just after Champions, look at his kill per round. I have not seen a pro player with stats that bad, like, ever on a top team that's trying to make playoffs or something. It's not just like he's in a rut, but even when they've done incredibly well at tournaments, he's not been a performer in the slightest. And even at Champions, he was like in the bottom 10 players. He was like 6th worst for ADR, 13th worst for kills per round. He's also just not even contributing with, like, the cast is at 58%. All of this to say, right, I'm not just trying to be a scoreboard Steven. When you watch him in the game, he is getting fucking rolled. He has a job to, like, hold an area, hold an angle, he gets run over. And it happens constantly for them. And it feels almost necessary at this point that they would have to make that adjustment. Obviously, there are bigger issues with their map pool overall, but Keyless has just had such a bad time in, like, the last 6 months that I find it difficult to justify his position on the team, despite the fact he got re-signed to a contract at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, I mean, I argued against a lot of people for, like, his impact in Champions being sort of not recognized as much, because a lot of it was just watching the flanks, trying to keep that control, certainly on Bind, right, where he's just going to be the Viper on shot, just keeping that spot. From casting them playing up against G2 on Bind, I said it then, and I still stand by it, like, with them not playing around showers because Keyless was playing from that short position, he was just set up to fail. He had to hold against Nukier and Mixwell from 2 very different parts of the map, whilst the rest of his team tried to, like, push towards, like, B long and take that space. Also, like, he is Ukrainian. He lives in Spain, and, like, there's a lot of family stuff that he still has family in Ukraine, for example. So I feel like that's obviously going to have, like, a big negative impact. But yeah, I feel like he is the most, like, obvious thing to pinpoint when stuff is going wrong. But I do think that there is a lot more at play for the most part. And I also think that his team haven't really set him up for success. And in a lot of cases, the rest of the team is off doing something else, and Keyless has to watch and hold a certain part of the map, in which case he tends to just get ran over, especially at this level where you're playing up against, you know, guild that have been hungry for blood. If Keyless runs into safe, there's only one person that's winning that kind of fight in duel, right? So I do agree with you to an extent, but I do, like, sympathize with Keyless very much being left out to dry. And I think Acend maybe felt that they had to reinvent themselves in some areas, in some cases, like, especially with map pools like Fracture and stuff. I think it's something to scrutinize a lot more for stage 2, if and when it happens, because this Acend team, it felt like they weren't, like, for Fnatic, for example, they built on what made them so successful at Champions and made it work. Like, Haven is a really good map to come back to for Fnatic, because that was the map that they chose against Crew and got bodied on in the quarterfinals. They look a lot more stronger now. They look a lot more coherent, and they look ready for the next patch. Whereas I feel that this Acend team have been very fatigued. They're still kind of playing the same ideas and strategies that won them Champions. So a lot of teams have come in very prepared for that. If you have Guild, for example, going up and playing up against this team, it's so hard for Ascend to adapt to Guild, whereas Guild are like, we know this pool of like strategies that they use.
Bit of a Super Bowl hangover kind of
yeah, right,
kind
like
of vibe. I mean, that tweet
like
from Keyless though, Kurt, is a little bit illuminating as to the mood within the team too, because he says the entire year has, entire year, I'm maybe putting too much emphasis on there because there's only been like 2.5 months, but still, a significant portion of time has been an absolute nightmare for all of us, he says. Constant non-game problems. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's a great point to bring up that he's Spanish-Ukrainian, and so obviously this period of time will be really rough for him. The issues have extended prior to that too, but I'm sure it all compounds on top of each other. Perhaps it is something where you need to wait and see for stage 2. The next big thing that happened was in order for Ascend to not make Masters 1, G2 also had to win their game against Guild. So let's talk about that for a little bit too, because G2 it has felt like Carlos's carousel for a little while, but it's actually on track right now. It's working, which is mad to me because it felt so nonsensical from the outside that like Carlox mix well, and not really attacking the core issue of like getting structure within the team. But holy shit, the last 2 weeks have been amazing for Nookie's IGLing, I think. That, when I'm looking at like G2 overall, the structure improvement and their macro game and what Nookie's been able to do individually as well are leading me to believe he is one of the most, I mean, I already thought he was one of the most valuable players, but like even more valuable than I'd previously thought, because he also is actually being successful at the IGLing component, which you almost never get from like a Star Duelist player. They all think they can do it, but they can't usually.
Really hard.
Yeah, and yet he is doing it really well.
Mostly IGL players, when it comes to the statistics, are in the bottom of VCT.
Yes. Yep. Half of the IGLs from North America are in the bottom 10 ACS.
And
yet Nookie is dominant, absolutely dominant. When he plays on Raze, his Raze in 2022 is just nuts. He's got he averages 190 ADR on Raze this year.
No, man.
And that's crazy.
While IGLing too.
Yeah.
While IGLing. That's the crazy part to me, is like doing that much damage while having to call all the plays, like being the IGL for the team. It just requires so much. People really don't get like how mentally taxing it is to like when they're, especially when you're thinking of all the micro plays, all the rotations, like you get new information, something your mid round's fucked up and it's like, oh, I'm lining up my nade. What's that? 2 people just fed in showers? Oh shit. You have to change. Like, it's just crazy thinking about how much mental capacity that requires.
You've hit on the head kind of the big thing though, which was about the structure of G2 and not having that consistent roster that they're playing with. When you're playing musical chairs all the time, I imagine it's a big weight off the shoulders of the players knowing that it's do or die time with this roster and this is it.
Sure.
Like you've got Mixwell in the team. Now this is the roster you're going to be performing with.
Yeah, Mixwell's Jett has actually been looking good too. I had my concerns about it, but it's been looking pretty clean. I think, though, the most important part is definitely Nookie. In this round, he just reads the play coming through showers perfectly, gives them space in showers, finds the flank through short, comes back into the Viper's pit. It's a pretty poor pit, actually, from Trex, but he's just such a smart player. And you know how other teams set their IGLs up for success sometimes, but it's weird because they're not the best player on the team. I'm thinking about, like, you know how Bala criticized Valin early on with the Guard? Because he's the IGL, he can see the timings in his head, so he goes for them, even though he's on Astra. That's kind of what G2 are doing, especially on Bind. Nookie reads the play that's going on and decides, do I push showers here? Do I rotate? He's always farming the orb in showers, sorry. He's constantly got his ult online, constantly in position to make the big play, but he's also the best player on the team. So it just makes sense. He's like IGLing the team to set him up for success, but he's such a fucking good player. It works.
I do want to shout out Avova as well.
It's beautiful.
Like, Avova on this map had less than 100 ACS, and I think he had 3 kills. It is the most impactful performance I've seen with an ACS under 100, because not only was he carting the map around, there was another tweet that came out of Leica who did the whole Hiko baiting tweet where he's just sat singing having fireworks in the background. He did another one of Evolver with Around the World from Daft Punk playing, where Evolver with the spike goes up B long, goes through the teleporter, comes around through attacker spawn, goes up B long, goes through the teleporter again, and then goes through showers for the plant, just following the minimap of Evolver, running around, doing absolutely nothing but everything at the same time. And then, of course, he had a couple of like ninja diffusers that came in clutch moments, right? I think that the map pool looked a lot better for G2 here. They banned out Breeze, which has been Guild's absolute best map so far. Guild haven't played Bind at all in challenges. The last time they played up was against Team Vitality, who is a much, much more different opponent. And G2 showing that it wasn't just a fluke that they were able to beat Acend on this map.
No,
that this
they look nasty.
composition, this idea. And Guild had so many amazing ideas to try and like stop Nukier from playing in that Showers position. For example, putting a grab well in Showers on the entrance, waiting for contact on Nukier with like a Trailblazer, using the grab and then a Hunter's Fury to try and catch him.
Yeah, and he just escaped.
He just escapes, and he's still fighting for those spots. And it got to a point where Russ, who usually defaults in that position on attack, he was just, I can't do anything. It's not, this guy's a freak. I just need to go with the rest of my team to set them up.
Yeah.
And then G2 sort of go on and go for strength to strength. But that's a Guild's map pick.
By the way,
it feels like for a lot of these teams, they have like one good map, and that's kind of about it. And G2 and Fnatic are looking really good on multiple maps.
Another bonkers thing about that game as well that just added to the EMEA chaos this week, the first half of Bind, every Thrifty round resulted in a win.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
What?
Yeah. Apart from
didn't they have
two,
like some ridiculous stats where like they had like 6 rounds, 1 Thrifty or something? It was like fucking crazy how many Thrifty rounds they won.
Yeah, it was in the first half, it was like I think it was 5 Thrifty rounds, one in the first half. Every single Thrifty round resulted in a win, apart from round 2, where you win the pistol and then you're on the anti-eco. But all of the other ones where they had sheriffs or, you know, a guardian or a marshal or whatever, they all won every time. And it just added to this chaotic feeling of it was super scrappy. They could never get an advantage. But G2 ended this half at 6-6 and then demolished Guild by just running it into B. They actually just ran the we go B every round and win. And then Icebox, holy mother of God, Kurt just run the clips. It's G2 went A every round. They 5-player went A every single round.
Wait,
every
the Immortal
round.
strat?
Finally, from fucking 2020, the Immortal strat is here.
Every round.
It was really smart as well, because they went, I'm just looking at my notes, like they went A 6 times, and then there was a tactical timeout from Guild. And then they would be. It was just like Guild knew, like, all right, we've tilted them enough to get them to call timeout, where they're like, okay, we need to focus on this A defense and do this kind of thing. But also, I think that this is a really interesting testament for like the meta as well, where a lot of teams like Guild are using this composition with a KO. Trex did nothing. Like he'd throw out like the 0 point early on, maybe catch Nukier in his drone, but then G2 would still go there. Like Evolver's playing on the top of 410, being like vulnerable by this retake toxic screen that a lot of teams use that goes to top 410. He's just stood in it, and he gets a free K from fighting in those positions. It was ridiculous how much G2 was able to get away with. Guild with this whole composition, the whole idea is like with the KO, we can play on site on A, just try and duel them and shut down any like chamber that's going to try and peek up and stuff. But I think that this whole like Killjoy composition that G2 and Fnatic have been running, bearing in mind that Fnatic is also superb on this map,
yeah, they are.
is the way to go. Like it felt that the KO really fell flat in this one, and G2 Fnatic found a lot of success on this map, and it's kind of crazy that they're the two teams that look the best in a group that has Guild and Acend in it.
It is mad, isn't it? But seriously, G2 feel like they're back. Now, my one concern with G2, though, is that they basically went B every round on their attack Bind, and they basically went A every round on their attack Icebox. So it's not like they demonstrated very much strategical depth. But if it worked, it worked. They literally just did it over and over again. This was Safe trying to do something different. He pushed up on round 9, got caught. He decides, okay, I need to challenge this round early, but no one helps him. There's no utility to put pressure on him. He dies. G2 just feel like they're winning every duel. They're double-facing belt. And it goes again. Here's another lockdown, same as round 4. And it's just... Guild could not find a single thing to work for them. They were losing every opening duel. Nuki ended this map with like 230 ADR, something crazy. He's a god. It's not like they're doing anything mad with their attack side IGLing. They're just keeping it simple and executing insanely well. And I think it's going to be pretty effective in the playoffs because it's a simple
new
plan.
patch.
Yeah, I mean, I
New
also
patch,
think
new
that,
icebox, right? So maybe new icebox, they actually do have to have a different approach.
Because there wasn't even that much nuance in the play anyway.
No, I mean, they could literally just go A every round and they wouldn't even see the new changes on icebox.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably thought they were playing on the new version, right? With this comp, it's just exactly the same. Like, what? This old patch feels so much similar to the old one.
Nuki's like, don't go B. We haven't been scrimming B.
Exactly. Like this, I remember this being a lot more complicated, right, guys? But I also think that like watching Safe throughout the series was curious as well. Like being not so much critical of him. Like I know that like me and Bala were very much saying the last time, like I wonder how he's going to do up against not so much like other good Jets, like your Durkas, like your CNEDs, like your even like QT for BBL has been looking really good recently. I have no doubt when it comes to those kind of games that Safe can perform because he has already up against like CNED, up against some of the other teams here, but just teams that either out-duel him, like G2 did in this case, or like up against a Gambit who might have a game plan to just kind of quieten down the star player on a roster. Like Safe stats are still incredible, but I felt in this series he maybe not so much tried to do a bit too much, but there was a play that we saw, right, where he jumps into a Viper's Pit with an operator, an enemy's Viper's Pit, and it's those kind of like out there plays that he wasn't finding any success with. And there were rounds like on Bind, for example, where he got like a 3K and looked really good. But that was also the round where Vova just stuck the defuse in the middle of the smoke on the B site. So,
well, I think one of the things I noticed the most about Safe was he is a cracked player, but he never comes. I think this might be Jett inexperience. He doesn't come for his teammates to help him. When he makes a play, it just all comes from up here, and it doesn't get communicated via his mouth. So, like, if he goes for a play, if he's like, I'm gonna find this timing into a Viper's Pit, or I want to challenge early on Icebox, or something, you know, like he's going to make a play. He doesn't have in his head, I need to ask my Sova to throw a recon for me, or I need to ask someone to hold my belt, or I need to, you know, that next step of who should I be requesting to assist me doesn't appear to be there for Guild. It's just Safe on his own too often. And he is incredibly talented, but you need that additional layer. Otherwise, he just gets caught out too much. Also, what the fuck is that stats page with Twiston's first kills? How the fuck has he got 0.4 first kill per round?
Twiston's a fucking nutcase.
He is a nutcase.
He's an actual nutcase.
Like, when he plays Jett, he's good, but when he's on other stuff, it's not as successful for Big. I mean,
his Raze entrying was pretty. He
is crazy when he's on entry, when he's just on entry agents. He just like does the wildest shit for Big often. Like they love doing crazy stuff.
It's
like, it's just crazy.
He's also dying first.
Cypher probably really good as well. Like his first kills in Cypher, I would bet would also be astronomically high.
Let's have a look. Cypher, where is he? Twiston.
He's there, third.
First death per round, 0.14 though, is pretty fucking high for a Cypher first deaths. But yeah, he's just a crazy aggro player.
I'm fairly sure his race stats were inflated by their match against Team Liquid.
Well, let's talk about Team Liquid then. Let's go on to this. So FPX, they have continued what we're dubbing the upsets by beating Team Liquid. But at this point, they've beaten Gambit. And they've beaten Liquid even without Angel playing.
Yeah,
Angel,
this is the insane part.
That's mad, isn't it? It's without their IGL.
Angel's their IGL. He's not playing, so they got a sub. And Shower's taking up the IGLing. And the big takeaway from this is that FPX are the real deal, I think, right now. There are a couple of big overarching stories you take away from this match against Team Liquid. One, it was immediately obvious to me that Team Liquid were off on the day.
Right.
They were out of sync. They were disjointed in terms of their overall plans and ideas. But for FPX, just to talk positives of the FPX were always cooking up not cooking up, but they had fantastic ideas of the win conditions in a given round by Team Liquid. They were reading the alts, they're reading the money, they were saying, okay, they're probably going to be leaning towards this, they're going to probably try to do this, and they would adjust and cook up game plans with either their own ultimates to just essentially negate it. Because there's a lot of tendencies that Liquid fall into, like Nivera attacking with an operator, or the way they use their ultimates with the lockdown or the KO ult with Scream. I have 3 rounds back to back that I think showcase it really well, which is just this disjointedness, I think, from Liquid that you see. They try to go for like a deep play, I think, to punish Artis, who's opping from market. I think it's just a play for him with the dash in. Shao ends up using his Hunter's Fury to try and get value here. I don't know what the play was off of that, but he wastes the ult. And so Liquid are like, okay, quickly, this is the round, I think, where they try to pivot into A and capitalize off of it pretty rapidly. But you start to see where FPX, I think, are showcasing that it's not just them thinking one step ahead, but also just they've got the discipline and fundamentals now on top of it to back up those moments when it really gets hairy. Because I don't know if you can skip ahead like 10 seconds to see them into the site. Yeah, so this they put down a lockdown,
they use lockdown because
the Hunter's Fury, it's gone. The Silver's ult's gone.
Use KO as well.
Yeah, there's an interesting moment. Is this where the Soulcast? No, it's actually the previous round where the Soulcast, I think, uses Hunter's Fury, right?
It's the round before, yeah. Soulcast brings out his Hunter's Fury and then just cancels it instantly.
Right, so there was moments in this game
because his body line, you just see him go, oh, fuck.
You see him.
like,
he literally see him in a cam say, fuck, at that moment. But that was prior. And it was all these little things that were adding up that showcased that they were quite uncomfortable with it. But look at this. The ultimates that are ready, they know Nivira's opping from main. They put the Cosmic Divide up. They block off A main. The KO ult to try and push through. The players are able to trade effectively. Scream, I think, gets forced into a 1v1 at some point as well during all of this. And Link's just left to hold it down alone in hell. And this was, I think, a great example to showcase that FPX are just always thinking ahead in terms of what Liquid were doing in case a round went wrong and how they used their ultimates around that. And let me just pull up my notes as well real quick because this was...
Yeah,
round 11 was tragic. It was just tragic, honestly. I think I linked the round 11 timestamp as well, Kurt, for this map. But, this was the round we just... No, it wasn't the one that we just watched.
No.
This was quite tragic. They had the idea then to just push mid and try and break the alarm bot and break the door. But they're so kind of out of sync by just half a second in terms of how they want to take this space, that by the time that they're setting up for this B split, it's so obvious to FPX that this is happening the entire time. So like they're breaking a wall, it's a minute in, and they're just showcasing, they're making noise the entire time. There's no hint that it could be a pivot, a rotation. It could be a fake. There's no hint of it whatsoever. And it's all being contained. They know exactly where the players are. There's being locked down. They see the drone coming through. And just look at the indecision as they're trying to get in. Yambi's like updrafting, trying to collect this pick over here. Nobody breaks the dart here. Shao just darts. No one's on dart duty watching this. And they don't do a good job of pulling out this key utility every time they're going for these B hits. Honestly, the story of Acend in this entire map was that, where they were just very obvious in terms of their approach and their hits, and they were never really doing enough to pull out a dart, a pull. They were giving FPX the perfect timings every time to just completely stunt every single push attempt. But the big overarching themes here are FPX are now the real deal. I came into that series thinking that they were kind of the underdogs. I need to shift that mentality, I think, that lens, because... I mean, this team is good.
But even if you thought FPX were the better team, they should be the underdogs with their IGL on the bench.
Right, Shao was IGLing, and it was one of the major takeaways for me was that how good of a read they had on what Liquid were doing. Yeah. Obviously, part of that is because Liquid were playing pretty poorly, but...
I think Liquid are also quite a formulaic team. I think that's one of their big downsides right now, is that you can really read what they're doing in every round. Especially like this Haven composition. They just do the same stuff constantly. It feels like Liquid's approach right now is to have a weird comp to throw off their opponent, or to give them, like, in terms of how they think about the strategy, it's composition first and then trying to get... The problem with comps like this is you have to use every piece working together to get the value.
Look at how quick FPX are to adjust in this round here with this pistol round. They're set up. They're initially trying to set up to take B on the pistol and try and get the plant down, but it goes wrong pretty quickly. They send in a knife, the player goes down. Look at how quickly they just immediately adjusted a C hit. They're already in there. The drone's coming in, and the players are following it in straight away off the bat. It's instantaneous in terms of just the quick decision to make it. And then the dart comes through, they swing through at the same times. And Liquid are just... something wasn't clicking in this series. It was very evident. I actually had one of the analysts... Bacon was in my chat when I was VOD reviewing this, and he was saying it was definitely kind of like this...
Bacon, analyst for Liquid?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then he was saying that essentially there was a bit of that mental component where they were feeling like their confidence knocked and everything wasn't really coming together for them. They did end up fixing that in the next match with Big to a degree, but I still think there is those confidence problems because you can just pull up the Team Liquid versus Big stat page, Kurt, on VLR, because I want you to see the round history of Bind. I mean, I was watching this game and I was thinking, how in the fuck do Big make a comeback happen and bring it to OT? The answer is Twiston just started slanging. My man was just whipping it out and the table was vibrating. Like he was slanging in the middle of this map. He was actually going hard. It was unbelievable. But Liquid got knocked off tilt a little bit. At the beginning, everyone's playing with confidence. They're winning so many aim duels. But then there was a couple of shifts, a couple of key rounds. And then suddenly it felt like they just were a completely different team. They just couldn't really adjust to it. Like the momentum shifted round 9. Round 9 was the big turnaround in this map, but it starts off so well for Liquid in terms of just playing off each other. You can tell that they came into it with a renewed mindset off the back of that FPX game because they really weren't playing 100% in that one.
Yeah.
But there's still those weaknesses of the booming that's just infecting so many of these teams at the moment. It's still there. It's still present for Liquid.
Yeah, it frustrates me watching Liquid at the moment because it feels like they've gone too far in the realm of trying to find comps that have cool ideas. And they tend to have one big idea with their composition that makes it good. It genuinely is. Like there's at least always one, normally 2 or 3 good ideas with their comp. But once it gets outside of those couple of good ideas, or once the opponent figures out how to work around one of those good ideas, then they don't have that level of strategic depth, it feels. And if you contrast that to their run towards the end of the year, where they looked nasty good, and they had the double op setups that they were working, and the way that they were using their compositions fluidly, I don't know, there was so much more depth to what they were doing at the end of last year, whereas now they feel a bit one-dimensional. It feels like we have a comp that does one thing really well, but it doesn't do everything really well. And it just feels like such an issue to me right now.
You know, because like if you're going to be, the problem with prepping for all teams is that if you spend a lot of time creating strategies that are like deviating from the norm, you have to spend a lot more time hammering out the fundamentals of your comp and like hammering out your idea.
They definitely
and then you
have that.
Yeah, and they have that, right?
But when it fails,
where's the rest of it?
Yeah, when it fails, which it did in that first match, they collapse is the big thing. It's not that you can lean on the strength of your comp anymore because it was. And I think I said it on the last episode of the podcast, didn't I? Talking about Team Liquid, I was like, how much of them playing the silly comps, as we call them, where they cook up these very unique compositions, how much of their success is basically just being carried from them being really good at the game and really amazing chemistry and team play? Like, is that carrying it forwards and giving them this false sense of confidence where they think the composition is actually working in some scenarios?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a weird one. Liquid, though, sometimes do have these kind of runs where they obviously they're a good team, but they just can't get it together. I mean, that was what happened.
It's a cycle, isn't it?
It is.
It's just they go from looking really good to trying some weird shit to the weird shit not working to them reverting back to the normal stuff / dropping a player and getting somebody else in to go back to dunking on people.
Yeah.
The other thing as well, like credit to Big, like they're likely to get relegated depending on Gambit just winning a game. But the fact that God B called against this composition where there's no way in hell that he was expecting something as batshit as this to come out from Liquid, the fact that he called against it so well, and certainly the second half, the Neon found 0 impact. Like it was... It's a shame to see Big being relegated to the promotions tournament where they have to play up against the regional leagues. But
can you explain how that works, actually, Ryan? Sorry.
Yeah. So there's 8 regional leagues, I guess 7 now, depending on what happens with like the CIS one. But there are various different tier 2 tournaments happening depending on what part of Europe you're in. So you've got the Northeast, which is like UK and Nordic. Spain has its own, which is South Europe. France. East, which I guess is sort of Lithuania and stuff like that, Turkey. Basically, there'll be a team crowned from each of those regions that's the best. they'll get promoted to this promotions tournament. So let's say Alliance win it for the UK Nordic one, and it's Footballista win it in Turkey. They'll go up to play into a tournament with Supermassive Blaze, who got relegated from Group B, and pretty much likely to be big from Group A. 2 teams will come out of that. It's kind of like for Overwatch fans, it's basically like the contenders like gauntlet tournaments that used to be happening in the tier 2 scene. So it should be a really good fun watch for them. But I'm a little bit concerned that not only Supermassive Blaze won't be able to bounce back, but Big won't be either, which is a shame considering how likable this roster is and how good they are with players like Obnox and Twiston. I think it's just they couldn't get much going, and with everything going on at the moment, like it says a lot that FPX absolutely dumpstered on Team Liquid, then went on to lose against London United, who are also a team that is very good at like thinking on the fly. And to jump back to FPX real quick, they had to change up their map pool because they can't play the likes of Split and Bind when they don't have their IGL mid-rounding calls. So the fact that they just went onto maps like Ascent Haven, kind of pugged it a little bit, let's be honest, and then still beat Liquid as dominantly is a huge red flag for me and Liquid at the moment.
Yeah. Big overarching takes though with this is like, I mean, FPX they're a good team right now. If Artis feels like he's playing in his form when he was entering the scene, essentially.
It's Artis against the team that he, came in
that's a good point,
well.
actually. Yeah. But he feels like he's playing up to that kind of old form where he was really popping off way
I
back.
think he was going to either.
I thought he was just washed and done, but he's made this resurgence, which
him and Mixwell actually.
Mm-hmm.
Impressive.
Yampy, however, I was just going to say, like, Yampy was a real torrid performance from him. Like, I don't mind his chamber. I think that works a lot for him. And you've seen a lot of teams just go and move over to the chamber full time, like G2, for example, when Mixwell's playing the chamber. Looks really good. It's a nice sort of direction that you can lean on with your comp that suits you. But Yampy just got completely diffed on the Jett. And he was just doing the Yampy things where he dashes in, trying to close the distance. And it was super touch and go. I didn't like watching it at all. And yeah, I think Liquid still have enough about them to still qualify for Reykjavik, don't get me wrong. However, it does concern me that they have maps like Bind where they went from no duelist to running a Neon composition.
Their Bind is so weird.
Not looking convincing at all,
I think
the only EMEA team that looks convincing right now, in my opinion, is Fnatic. G2 are starting to get my confidence back, and we haven't seen Gambit, now called M3 champions there. We haven't really seen them play. So, I did like what I saw with Gambit. I'm kind of leaving them out of that conversation a bit.
I think Navi's like a dark horse in that conversation. We haven't seen them play enough, but I think Navi's actually kind of a dark horse in that conversation.
Right.
So
let's talk about Gambit a little bit, though, because the big news, you alluded to it earlier, actually, Ryan, was that the Gambit roster is going to resume playing again under this new name, Masters 3 Champion. So M3C is what I'm going to say, because otherwise that's a mouthful and it's confusing. But
it's called Mech.
Yeah,
Mech.
so this is obviously coming off the back of the war that's happening in Ukraine, sanctions against Russian organizations that are, mostly the ones that are tied to government entities or oligarchs within Russia, but also it just has extended further than that as well. So I'm not exactly clued up on the ownership behind Gambit, but they've been kind of sanctioned, if we want to use that word, in both CSGO and in VALORANT now. There's been no official communication, I guess, from Riot, as far as I'm aware, that says Riot forced this, but it feels like obviously Riot forced this, because
I feel like
there's no way Gambit would just do this of their own volition.
Yeah.
It's a tricky situation as well, and I speak from somebody that has no insight on this, because I'm working on the EMEA. But my assumption as well, again, my assumption, not anything based, is just that even we get to a point where, say, Gambit do still qualify for Reykjavik, they won't be able to go. And any team that actually has a Russian player on it for visa issues won't be able to travel to Reykjavik.
You say
to
that.
play.
That is, of course, a possibility. But one thing that G2 have been doing with Munzi in CS right now is trying to get him Serbian citizenship. And if you have Serbian citizenship, you, I believe, are not blocked by the visa sanctions that apply to Russian people in general. So Russian individuals are getting visas blocked because of the war that's currently going on. And I believe people are trying to maneuver around that by using Serbian citizenship. So that could be an option that they pursue. But you're right, it could just end up with this team that I think this roster is the best performing roster of 2021. They might not be there to be able to compete at Reykjavik. It's entirely possible.
Yeah, especially with Acend not qualifying for playoffs either. It would be weird to see the number 1 and number 2 teams in the world actually not be at the next international event out of it.
Yeah.
There's also the whole point of like, I think you can get around it from like traveling from other parts of Europe to Reykjavik to Iceland, but it's not only about getting a visa in Europe, it also could be getting a visa in Iceland. I think you need like actual invitations to actually get there for the most part. So again, it's something that like Fnatic brought in Otom as their substitute. I'm pretty sure Guild have somebody that's subbing in as well that hasn't been confirmed or announced yet. So it might be like a Bren Esports situation where even if somebody like Gambit or FPX or Navi do qualify for Reykjavik, they won't be able to play, but will still get the points as if they were there to be attended, much like Bren Esports for Masters Berlin last year for a whole different form of reasons. It's been manic.
I was looking up the sanctions basically that Iceland had put in against Russia. They had like an agreement, I think, in 2008 to simplify the visa process, and obviously, since the Ukrainian war, they've just suspended all visas for Russian citizens across the board.
Right.
And they've undone a lot of the streamlining for it.
Right.
That's coupled on top of the fact that it's hard to even travel outside of Russia because flights have been banned and stopped. So it's logistically, it might even mean that by the time, if Gambit even, or if M3C do qualify, there could be theoretically a world where they could go to Reykjavik if they manage to do jump through all those hoops that you were talking about earlier. But I just don't know if they'd have the time at all to even get that done.
You have to probably quarantine as well, I'd imagine. For a country like Iceland, it's, you know, an island with a set amount of people, and with COVID still being a thing, I would imagine that like stuff like quarantining is going to be taken seriously, because if somebody comes in with, I don't know, like Omicron of COVID and they don't take it seriously, that's a whole island of, you know, like a couple of thousand people all getting it, right? So it is a very nasty turnaround, even from like hearing for other talent that are going to Masters. It is a very sharp turnaround from like playoffs finishing to basically preparing to go to Reykjavik. So it's a tough old one.
Doesn't Riot have its own rules too? Besides, because they're not allowing event crowds at Masters, right? So isn't it like a twofold process of both Iceland?
Absolutely.
Riot's
I don't think
so,
Iceland itself is actually requiring quarantine. I think if
I thought like a lot of places throughout
Riot.
the world had dropped the majority of their restrictions at this point. It's just a Riot thing because they're having events with crowds elsewhere. They're just not doing it for Masters.
Do you have auto gain on your mic?
No.
Is it in the program we use, in the webpage we use?
I have never touched a digital setting to this microphone.
You're just a man, okay? You're just too much of a man.
You're actually
Chad.
You're very dank.
I don't know. I mean, I can turn down the gain a bit.
It's all right.
It's fine.
Kurt's got it on. So let's talk about this M3C roster in general, though. Can they make the playoffs? Like, is it feasible for them to get to a position where these questions have to be asked? We have their schedule coming up, so are we able to take a look at that, Kurt? Just the VLR page, basically, of the games that they've got. So they play against Na'Vi, who've also been on a break. They play against Big and London United. Would you anticipate this team, given everything that's going on, still being able to make it?
I think it's a big dampener, though, on motivation in terms of even qualifying. Because I've seen in the past, I actually do have a kind of equatable example, which is when we were covering Overwatch, there was a team that was playing in Europe, and with the COVID restrictions, they qualified, or like they were playing in the qualifiers, and they were looking like they could have made it.
Right.
But it's just a fact that if you know that even if you qualify, you can't fly over, you can't make it to the event, it's a drag on your motivation, I think, to even push forwards and actually, do well in these matches. Obviously, I think I don't want to speculate too much on like their attitudes coming into these matches, because they might be very driven and want to do everything that they can to make it there. But it's definitely a factor to consider that, I don't know, it's one additional thing at the back of your mind on top of the fact that, you're playing back-to-back-to-back matches. So you don't even get time to prep for each individual match.
Yeah, that is absolutely something to weigh up there as well. It's a very different format compared to having a full week to prep for your opponents. If you have a bad week, that's half. I mean, that's more than half. That's 60% of your games, right? So, yeah, I don't think that we should really be using these results coming up next week to judge the M3C roster for the future. I think that this is an extraordinary circumstance. But having said that, I would still consider them to be favorites in each of the individual matches. I don't know about you lot as well, but they are that quality of team where you would expect them, still with everything going on, to win like 2 out of 3, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but,
the only team
but it wouldn't be crazy if they lost them all. You know, if they lost them all, you'd be like, all right, well, weird scenario going on.
Get relegated. If they lost them all, they would actually get relegated to the promotions tournament that I was talking about before, which would be can you imagine?
That would be that would be
Could they just be
brutal.
smurfing?
Yeah.
Well, unless they have to play the relegation tournament while other shit's still going on.
I mean, in
well,
which case it's not smurfing, it's just unfortunate. But
and I don't know what's going on with the regional league CIS, which has its own right. So like all of those games have been postponed, and for somebody that's like trying to actively keep up with them, I don't know if they've continued at all because of like focusing on the EMEA. I will say though, like knowing the Gambit, the MEC guys, I got to get practice that to make sure I don't see it on broadcast tomorrow. But it's one of these things where like they are very like focused and just want to play. Like obviously they are just a bunch of like nice guys with the approach. Like they've been very like supportive of everything going on at the moment for like Ukrainians and their friends and stuff. They play and work with a lot of like Ukrainian players themselves. But I would say as well, they will have a bone to pick with the fact that their last official game, they lost to FPX in 2 games that went to overtime, or 2 maps that went to overtime.
That was a mad match.
I think from like doing my prep on them as well, their map pool's in a really interesting spot, all things considered, because their bind is looking a lot better overall, which was a map that they struggled a little bit with at Champions, like losing to Vikings, for example. Their split, they haven't played since Champions. Their Haven, they permabanned a lot. Their Fracture looked really good from the brief bit of it that we saw from Champions. And Breeze, they're coming out with the whole Jet Chamber composition, which I think they were the first to do it. In that first week against Team Liquid, and then we start to see other teams, like I think the Guards start to use that composition, right? It's similar sort of thing. So I think CIS as a region buff, them and Navi are not so much inventing a lot of compositions. They might be taking it from like DRX Vision Strikers, similar sort of stuff there, right? But they are bringing a whole new look to the game that is going to be very difficult to prep for if you are London and Big. Big especially, it's a major game for them to win, but it might not even matter. If MEC win their game tomorrow against Navi, Big are relegated, doesn't really happen that much there. Right. But it is terrifying, I think, for all of the teams, because I got sent like the official like permutations list to see who's going to qualify if X or Y happens. It is still up. There's a chance that we could have 1 to 4 all tied on wins and losses. Like that,
Dude,
it's still
I love
so
round
open
robins
with this group.
I'm the #1 round robin hater. If I see another Christmas card with a fat looking robin, I'm gonna fucking lose my mind. Round robins.
How many Christmas cards do you get with rotund robins?
How many? Really popular in the UK.
Yeah, it's popular in the UK.
Very popular.
I never get any robin-based paraphernalia.
The robin in the UK is a slightly smaller, plumper bird. And it's very Christmas associated because they come out in winter and they've got a beautiful flash of color.
Yeah, there you go.
It is. Wow, that is a very round robin.
See, they're very spherical. Yeah,
we only know
you,
Baskin
round
robin.
Fuck you. I prefer the Swiss system. What is round robin?
Is that is that why they call it round robins?
No, I don't know why it's called round robin. Not a clue. Let's go on to the predictions though. EMEA predictions for the quarterfinals. Not for the quarterfinals. In fact, for the bloody end of the group stage.
Last group stage game.
Now who's got brain fog?
I know.
Now
Sorry.
who's got it?
My apologies there. So we only have 2 games to take a look at here because we aren't predicting each one of the M3C games. So these are the other big matches that are happening so far this week. So first one being Fnatic against Guild. This is the top team from Group B against Guild, who've been doing extremely well, although lost the game to G2, and Bren has actually gone for Guild. I was really impressed with Fnatic. I can't pred against them. They just dirk us on a hot streak. I refuse to do it.
I have no real basis to put this on. I'm going to be honest with you.
NA.
Yep, I've been working the NA VCT broadcast. All my prep and homework has been for EMEA side has been watching a bit of Acend and Team Liquid and FPX.
Right, makes sense.
And so off the back of this, I don't have too much to go off of. I mean,
honestly, I'm not saying it's not a silly pred though. Guild,
it's not impossible.
I think Safe has looked incredibly good individually, and if they can really shut down Durka, that will be helpful. But Durka has so much more support than Guild than Safe does on the other side of things, and I think that's going to be a major difference maker. Boaster has just figured out a great way of maximizing his impact on KO. I really didn't believe in it, but
Brave.
He's done so
Brave
well
is
with
insane.
it.
Brave might be the best Sova in the world when it comes to farm right now. And I know that there's like Trent and stuff, but like the playing of Sova, usually we're so used to just seeing a cracked player like Trent, for example, play the Sova, and a utility can be, decent, strong, knows to shock that lineups. But Brave just brings something completely new. It is almost like Overwatch levels of mastering an agent and character with what you can do, which is really exciting when you have Brave doing stuff like that. And then Nukier last week with the whole blast packing out of the way of a showstopper. I was like, this is Overwatch Central. I feel like I've gone back in time, back to there. Like Miska sat next to me kind of thing. But it is kind of like a real interesting look for this team. It's the map pool that I think gives Fnatic a big lead. They're going to ban out Breeze, likely, which is Guild's best map. Their Icebox looks a lot stronger. The curious thing is, are we going to see Fnatic play Bind for the first time since August 2021? Fnatic, who kind of wrote the book on how to play this
is that
map.
the last time they played Bind?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the team that they played, but it was something ridiculous. It was basically like qualifiers for stage 3 that they last played it, and they've not been banning it out. It's just nobody plays it against them. It's the same.
They did
like
ban it against. They banned it against Acend, which makes sense, right?
Which is fair enough. Yeah,
and that's
but
fair.
Everybody else.
Also, Boaster had been saying it at Champions that he wanted to play Bind against Acend. He wanted his throne of best team in the world on Bind back, and then he banned it. So
I mean, you can talk all the shit, but you don't want to actually go to Acend versus Bind at Champions.
It was a good map pool anyway. They won the series, so you can't.
Acend looks good. I think the big concern for us on the desk when we had the Fnatic Acend series was they're not picking Icebox against Acend. They're picking Haven, which is them trying to exploit the map pool. The fact that like Acend started to ban Fracture instead of Haven. Haven was kind of like their permaban, much like Gambit's. And Fnatic just went straight to it. They went straight for the throat, and then they just completely took that series convincingly, and then still managed to play it on Acend, which again it's never been a great Fnatic map. It used to be their worst, I think, in play, but still were able to look that good on those kind of maps. And then you have their Fracture, like their Breeze, they just ban out, but it wouldn't surprise me if they feel comfortable to pick it out at some point. This is the best of Fnatic I think have looked ever, considering that they were known as being a LAN team, right? Online, they look this good. I just hope that there's a world where we can see, I just hope that there's a world where we can see Fnatic qualify and Brave AF does get to go play at LAN in Reykjavik, right? I hope that that's something that can happen, because it is crazy to sort of think about how this is scoped out since the start. And it feels like it's gone in the blink of an eye, this whole stage.
Yeah. Okay, the next game that we've got coming up is Clash of the CIS teams. It's Na'Vi playing against FPX. Who have we got in this one then? Myself and Bren going for FPX, and then Ryan and Connor going for Na'Vi. Connor, why have you taken the Na'Vi train here?
I am a big believer in Na'Vi. I'm not gonna lie. After I've watched a couple of their matches, I actually think we like their talent is fucking crazy. And but I don't know exactly. Now I will admit, FPX. When I made this prediction, I hadn't watched all of FPX's match yet, and I still haven't watched all of FPX's match. I've watched like a map of it, but I'm like, okay, they're looking pretty good, I will say. But I actually still believe in Na'Vi pretty heavily. I think I really liked the look that they have when they have JD on the KO. I overall like their entire squad is looking pretty cohesive. I think they have a lot of fragging power, and I'm still not totally sold on FPX maintaining maintaining consistently high form, especially after their loss to London. I'm not sold on them maintaining like super high form because like watching their match versus Big to now they're a few matches in the middle and then losing to London recently. I'm like, does it stay? Like, I'm not sure. And then like, I don't, are they're still not going to have Angel, right?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Ryan, do you know any more about that? Is that one of the reasons that you went for Na'Vi?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that nobody was really expecting him to beat Liquid, which says a lot more about Liquid and FPX. Like, I think BadAG coming into the roster doing great is really nice. It reminds me of when he was on Ballista and just doing stupid stuff then. But the fact that like FPX weren't able to win out against London didn't surprise me. I think it's just a case of like teams can kind of look at a map pool and go, okay, yeah, if FPX are taking away some of those like heavy mid-round calling execution focus maps instead of your havens in a sense where you could just find an opening and then just make a call. It just feels that this is a heavily nerfed FPX, and I want to see them continue to play and do well. But I also think that it would benefit them a little bit as well to kind of like be safe in stage 1, prep for stage 2, and hope that the world is in a much better like place by the time the stage 2 rolls around. That Angel can play and is in a position to. So it's one of those cases where like VALORANT feels minuscule in comparison for this team that is dealing with a hell of a lot at the moment. And they're obviously going to be a miss with a stand-in. And Na'Vi as well, like Avast said, they're a dark horse to potentially do a lot of work, and they have their own spin on how they play the game, certainly with their main focus around JD's KO, playing it on 5 out of 7 of the maps. I think those kind of plays could do a lot for not only their chances in playoffs, but actually going to Reykjavik if that is a possibility, right? If they're able to play, I think some teams are going to struggle with how Na'Vi operate as a system because it's very different to how the rest of the world seems to work overall.
Yeah, like the patch shift would be really interesting for them to see like Duno go over to like Omen and Brim potentially for this team and how that changes that. Because I feel like when they have like more flashes available and can play even more heavily around like this entry style at times, it's going to be really interesting to see like Na'Vi moving forward on a different patch.
They've already shown a bit of like double flashing.
Yeah,
as well,
I think I truly do. I have like a strong belief in Na'Vi that they're just going to pop off. So.
What can we look at the recent games that Na'Vi's played real quick, Kurt? Just because I made a mental note of like their map tendencies with their pick bans, but I've immediately forgotten it because again, just
I got you.
I'm always pushing away the ever encroaching brain fog.
Do not go gently into the night, Bren. The brain fog night.
I think Na'Vi tend to ban towards their opponents, right?
Yeah, it's funny actually. The interesting stat about it is they've played 3 series so far. They've banned out a different map each time. They've picked a different map each time.
Yeah.
And they've second banned a different map each time.
They're
they're comfortable across different maps. Like FPX do the same when they're very like selective of we can play anything, and not only can we play all of the maps, we could play different comps on different maps depending on who we're playing against, which I would think is a bit hubris. I think it's maybe making things hard for yourself, but that's fucking FPX for you. Like, surprise, surprise. Na'Vi sort of similar, right? It's just that where I think it could be a really interesting series to watch both these guys play, and like 2 CIS teams. Sorry, I'm just thinking of their game against like Mech. I guess.
Yeah.
That's going to be really interesting to see just how they approach the game, right? But with there being a new patch on the horizon, it's more a case of like we're going to see some of the strategies that they might have held on to if we were still into an Astra Viper meta going into playoffs, right? So I'm curious to see how much that extends and what they're leaning towards in the future, right, with Brimstone and Omen.
I don't know if the pick bans... I feel like it does tilt it a little bit to Na'Vi's favor, but I can't deny what I watched in the VOD of FPX, where Artis is on this unreal form right now of his Jett play. I think for whatever reason, I wasn't expecting it, but Shao in the IGLing, even if he is IGLing, I have confidence in them as much as like Liquid were making it easy for them with their reads. I don't know, man. I feel like they've done really well to adjust, and it was one of the big takeaways for me was that just their grasp of the game on a macro sense of what was going on at any given time and how to play around it. That's the main reason I'm going with FPX.
Bren, you've got a segment coming up.
I do have a segment. It's not really a segment. It's more just a shout out.
Well, I don't know what it is.
Shout out to all my fans. That's why, no, it's not that. There's a little call to action for all the viewers, actually, because we want to get you involved in the show a lot more.
Okay.
And we want to get you involved big time to compete against us.
Whoa!
So we are going to do
Okay.
a viewer predictions to compete against us. So there you are. You're on your laptop, possibly watching Plat chat. And you've even drawn a picture around this. Oh, we're here.
Hello.
Hey.
Look at your cute chubby cheeks.
Hi, little Timmy. Would you like to pred against us? Well, we are going to do essentially a match of the week. We're going to post it on our Twitter. And we're going to post what we think is the match of the week, the one to watch for. And that Twitter poll, you can vote on that. And that will be the collective community vote in terms of what you guys are trending towards. And so you can prove, we can see as well as we're tallying up all the preds. You can follow our Twitter, obviously, at Plat Chat Podcast and check it out there as we post the match of the week when it happens. And you'll compete against us. We'll keep the tally. We'll keep it going. And we'll see if, it's essentially like the armchair analyst versus the armchair analyst.
Exactly.
And then if you guys beat us, you can take my job.
You can take a spot on the podcast.
Yep.
If you beat. Also, don't you dare pump up the interaction on that one. Don't go too crazy. But don't go too crazy on that one.
Don't you be engaging with us
retweet it too much.
Don't retweet or like it or comment on the tweet too often.
I love reverse engineering these guys.
This is subtle work.
And the match of the week is Sentinels versus the Guard, right? That's the one we decided on.
Yep. Sentinels v the Guard. So what the hell did we predict for Sentinels Guard?
Well, I picked Sen. The rest of you picked Guard.
You picked Sentinels. The rest of us picked the Guard. So either way, you're going to beat somebody.
Chat,
okay?
We're going to look so smart. We're going to look so smart, chat. We're going to look so smart.
I think because Balor's got a really good prediction rate right now.
Yeah, I think Balor is in the lead right now.
I think he's currently the highest. I'm second. Josh is second now, and now I'm third.
I think it should be if the community win, they get all of Balor's right predictions. They swap their win rates. Balor has to start again.
Why Balor's going to agree to that?
Why are we punishing Balor?
It should be Bren, if anybody. We should pick on the weakest, the runt of the litter.
I'm the weakest of the pack right now. Yeah.
All right, so there you go.
They can't build orangutan enclosures in squares.
Yes,
because they pin the other orangutans in the corner.
They have to build them circular.
Right, but what has that got to do with predicting matches?
It's because the Plat Chat house is also circular.
We're going to start talking about jumping and
pack mentality we've got. You guys are going to start posturing me into the corner of the house if my preds get too bad.
No, because you have the new Plat Chat compound is going to be a dome. It's going to be totally circular.
So I can escape. I can just run around in circles.
You can just run around.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will have a Twitter post for you to vote on, and also a community post on YouTube. So if you're not a Twitter user, then there'll be a community post for that as well. I don't know whether there'll be a poll there, but there'll be some kind of post. Kurt's on it. All right, Kurt's the god of that kind of stuff.
If there aren't polls on YouTube, I'm not doing it on YouTube, but I think there might be.
Well, just Twitter then.
There's definitely polls on YouTube.
The poll will be run on Twitter, but there will be also a post
videos?
on the community post. What, sorry?
You remember when old YouTube, there used to be polls in YouTube videos, in the top right, you used to have little polls for that. You do have them in the community.
When was that again? I don't.
Ryan, you've been on YouTube a lot longer than we have, and you're much more successful than we are. So we don't really remember that kind of stuff because we would have never used it anyway. It's just I was making TF2 highlights at that point.
The key to my success. It was the key to my success.
All right. So our final segment, the most important segment every week. It's Wyatt's weekly award.
Dude, where's my res? Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. Wyatt's weekly award.
Beautiful.
I miss him.
I miss him too.
Sometimes I can still hear him cooking in the kitchen. Sometimes I can still...
Sometimes it's almost like I can see him in my dreams. Directly across from us.
There.
Okay, Wyatt's weekly award. Listen, I've conferred with Wyatt this week.
Have you?
Oh my!
Have you?
I haven't, and he's
about to
shit!
Oh, there he is! Oh my, Dr. Valorant!
Is that Dr. Valorant's music?
There he is.
Who's it going to, Josh? And I'll rate it. I'll rate it like your pick. I'll let you know if it's shit or not. Is what I'm.
All right, squeeze on camera. Squeeze on
camera.
Get on
in. Yeah, make sure to. There we go. There we go. We moved over to the side.
Here's who I was going to give it to. Right? Here's who I was going to give it to. So I'm looking at the games that happened at the moment, right, this week. And I think the most impactful player, somebody that we haven't really highlighted recently, but is one of the best players in the world right now, is Leaf for C9. So I could have given it to Nookie. In my head, this week, it was between Nookie and Leaf. I think they're both up there in like top players in the world currently. But I went for Leaf because he fucking dominated the guard. Where does that rank in out of 10?
I actually think that's a pretty good one.
there
I
you go.
don't know where it ranks out of 10, but I actually think that's a pretty good one because you know, Cloud9, they've just been skating through the group. Not a lot of attention paid to them. They've just been really good the whole time, and then you know they go up against the toughest competition. Leaf gives you just a little bit of a reminder as to how good he actually is at the game. I mean, he's just too good. He dominated the guard, and everybody is now reminded that Cloud9 are probably going to make it to Iceland with ease. I mean, I don't know if that's what you guys predicted, but it definitely seems like Cloud9 and V1 are poised to make it to Iceland with relative ease at this point. I mean, unless Optic hit their form, but with some consistency. But
Leaf has over 1 KPR in the last 30 days. What is that? 1.07 on Jett. That's just, oh my God. In the past 30, it's 1.12. That's just nuts. The dude's a freak. He really is.
Yeah, that's fucking bonkers. And also, he's one of the players that can actually flex to other things and not just like flex to other things because, like, well, I can pick the other agents, but he actually picks them and plays them well.
And wants to play them.
So it's
he's not
hasn't he played at this point?
He's
not an ego player. It's not like he wants to be on the most impactful role. He's like playing quirky shit to help the team.
Just a light reminder of how good this dude is. But yeah, Cloud9 looking nice. Good pick, Josh. I'm okay with that one, actually. This is a good week for a Leaf pick. I'm not mad at that. I'm going to go finish cooking my lunch.
Wow.
The
4 to 5
certified
Dr. Valorant approve.
Wyatt's been cooking his lunch now for the last 4 weeks. He just keeps cooking his lunch, dumping it, thinking I need some different lunch. That's where he's been for the last 4 weeks. He's just trying to figure out the perfect lunch.
He's becoming a chef. He's just hard. He's just mastering
He doesn't
his
realize
craft.
that Bren has already invented the perfect lunch with his peri-peri mayo and whatever the fuck else you put in there.
Do you toast that bread, Bren? Do you toast it? Do you toast the bread?
It's too much work.
Okay, so you don't toast the bread on the perfect sandwich?
I went over to his place. It's even worse than that, Connor. I went over to his place and he offered me a sandwich, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'd love a sandwich, thank you." So he's all right. Okay, I've got the peri-peri mayo, I've got the oak smoked cheddar, and then he gave me a slice of bread, then the butt of the loaf. So it's the chewy fucking end of the loaf that's small as well. It's about that big, just plopped on top of a normal slice.
Yeah, it's
Well,
very
it would be
gourmet
fine if it
looking.
was toasted. If it was toasted, it would be fine.
No toast.
You would be paying like 25 euros in a Paris bakery for that.
No,
don't
you would
even come
not.
to me
No,
talking.
you would not.
Yeah, you
In
would.
Germany, that's a delicacy. I could not find a meal like that anywhere. It's just fucking salami here. That's all they do. It's just salami everywhere. Driving me insane.
They have the what is it? The Schweinefleisch or whatever, like or whatever is like that's like pork. It was like that's what Nuki was telling me. That C9 GM, she was telling me it was like something flesh, like Schweinefleisch or something like that. It's like that's pork.
Swine flesh
Yeah.
is like pig flesh.
Yeah, but no, it was like pork, but it's like pork or whatever. I don't know. But then she tried to make me order that in Germany, pork with that name, and I was like, I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's the right word.
Schnitzel's pretty nice.
Okay, well that does it for episode 83. Do you have any further updates about Indiana Jones, the Lego series that you want to share with us to end this? Connor?
The game is fucking broken on Steam, and everyone's making like we're bad at Lego Indiana Jones.
Actually,
Jaws and I were not.
I have a call to action for the viewers on top of the already existing call to action.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys can think up any glitchless out and run routes for any percent runs, hit me up. I'm trying to cook up a path right now. It's the only thing I can think of right now.
Yeah, we're gonna start an Elden Run podcast. So yeah, please get in
Elden
touch.
Run.
The Elden Run.
The Elden Run. Yeah. All right, we'll see you for episode 84 then, where we'll be discussing the playoffs and all of those quarterfinals matches and looking back over them. We'll start seeing the other regions as they head into playoffs too. I mean, we didn't touch on it this week, but Korea, Brazil, all of those playoffs are starting to begin as well.
up.
So it really
Not
do
enough
be
hours in
starting
the
to heat
day.
up. No, there's no way you can keep up with all of the Valorant. We'll have to
Literally.
keep having different guests on like Ryan. And yeah, Ryan, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you,
Really
Ryan.
appreciate
You
it.
actually, we have copied your homework.
Yeah, we had to copy your homework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine. People mute the desk anyway, so this is the chance I can actually get the news out. So
perfect.
all for it.
Thank you for teaching us about YouTube polls as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anytime.
All right. Well, we'll catch you next week.
Mail.
We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.